Chapter 121 Sneak Attacks. After half an hour, Chu and Masuyo suddenly got alert. Hundreds of small needle-like spikes suddenly began forming on the cave walls. Understanding the danger, they both immediately made hand signs. Water sphere barrier jutsu immediately. 2 layers of water dome barrier surrounded them. The outer layer was formed by Chu, while the inner layer was formed by Masuyo. Some water also flowed on the ground inside the dome. Hundreds of rock needles rained on the 2 barriers. Many needles managed to pierce through both barriers. Honzo and Shunji stepped in front of Chu and Masuyo and defended with kunais. They managed to deflect most, but a few needles still stabbed all of them. However, none were fatal injuries. Chu and Masuyo desperately poured more chakra into their jutsus. Honzo and Shunji too made hand signs. Honzo slammed his hands on the ground. 4 rock shields appeared around them. Shunji, on the other hand, released a spark that hit Masuyo's water sphere barrier. Electricity began flowing through it. The electric current slowed down most of the needles that pierced through the first barrier and hit the second barrier, making them harmless. The 4 Kiri ninjas were finally relieved for a moment. However, at that very instant, a stone spear silently and quickly rose through the ground under Terumi Honzo. His attention was focused on the needle rain and didn't notice the spear under him. The spear pierced his lower body, pierced through him, and exited through his head. He yelled in pain, but couldn't move. That startled his 3 teammates, who turned to see him. They were horrified. Their teammate's body was skewered with an earth spear. Shu immediately yelled, "Jump and run to the exit." Both Masuyo and Shunji jumped along with Chu. Earth spears formed under them as well and began moving towards them rapidly. All 3 kicked at the side of the spear to propel themselves towards the exit. Chu made a few hand signs. Water prison jutsu. A water sphere encased all 3 of them as they left the protection of the double-layered water sphere jutsu. As they left the underground, the water sphere kept getting pelted with rock needles. A few pierced through, but their speed was greatly reduced due to the water. They managed to defend themselves with a kunai as they got out. When they left the hideout, Fujin, Hoka and Miko sensed them. Sensing them rushing out, Fujin made a few hand signs and prepared vacuum bullet jutsu, while thinking, 3 people, 1 has Junin level chakra. 1 is Chunin level, and the last might be an elite Chunin. Junins are tough to kill. I'll target the elite Chunin. Soon, Sakoichu led them out of the underground. They appeared around 20 meters from where Renjiro and the rest were standing. As soon as they appeared, Fujin shot a vacuum bullet at Masuyo. Though they were in a lot of peril, Shu's water prison jutsu provided them with a sense of security. So despite expecting an attack as soon as they left, they expected themselves to at least put up a fight. However, right after leaving the underground, a vacuum bullet hit the water prison. It pierced into it with extreme ease and hit Masuyo's heart accurately. She fell down dead with her eyes wide in disbelief. Shu and Shunji were shocked again. First Honzo was killed unexpectedly, and now Masuyo. Even worse was the fact that Masuyo was their only sensor. Leaving the Land of Fire safely without her aid would be extremely difficult. Without giving them any time to grieve, Miko, Hoka, and the other 3 Chunnings moved to attack them. Shu immediately spat out a lot of water, forming a water wall between them. The water wall stopped them. They were about to move around the wall when Chu yelled loudly, "Stop, we surrender. We don't want to fight against Konoha." Hearing that, the 5 of them stopped. The water wall soon collapsed into the water. Before Renjiro could say anything, Shu spoke. "We were hunted by our Mizukage, despite not committing any crime. While escaping, we accidentally entered the Land of Fire. We have no intention of fighting against you." Renjiro knew about the situation in the Land of Water. He nodded and asked, "All right, but why didn't you surrender earlier?" Shu answered, "We were afraid of being accused of being from the same group as the ones who were attacking us." Renjiro thought for a bit and said, "Okay, turn around and raise your arms in the air. We will be arresting you for trespassing into the Land of Fire. If you're innocent, then Lord Hokage will meet you and make further decisions." Shu felt a bit odd by that command. This was her first time hearing something like this. Shu and Shunji turned around and raised their arms. As soon as they did it, Renjiro made a hand sign and slammed his hands on the ground. However, even before he slammed his hands, Chu grabbed Shunji and jumped. Immediately thick earth spears appeared below them. Fujin, Hoka and Miko smirked. Fujin immediately fired another vacuum bullet at Shunji while he was in the air. Miko threw a few shurikens on both, while Hoka attacked Chu with vacuum pom. Shu's main attention was on Renjiro and Fujin. As soon as Fujin shot the vacuum bullet, she pulled Shunji out of the way. However, the vacuum bullet was very fast. It sliced through the side of his abdomen and left a deep cut. While pulling Shunji, she herself got pulled towards him. This ensured that the vacuum bomb didn't hit her heart. However, it still hit her right lung. She coughed blood while blocking Miko's shurikens. On landing on the ground, she looked viciously at Renjiro and yelled, "Renjiro, you bastard, why did you attack us?" Renjiro snorted and replied, "Good job hiding your killing intent. Unfortunately, I can see your desire to kill us in your eyes." Renjiro suddenly became angry and shouted, "Do you think you can fool me?" As he shouted, he unleashed his killing intent. Shunji flinched on feeling it. Of course, Renjiro's anger was fake. He only talked so as to provide his students with enough time to prepare for another round of attack. None of his 3 students missed it. Fujin made hand signs for air bullet jutsu and flickered towards Chu and Shunji. Hoka and Miko too flickered. Fujin suddenly appeared to their left and shot 5 air bullets at Shunji and 2 at Chu. At such a close range, Shu couldn't perform ninjutsu in time to defend. While Shunji was still affected by Renjiro's killing intent, Chu immediately moved backwards and dragged Shunji with her. She dodged both bullets, but Shunji couldn't dodge 2 of them. One of them pierced his left thigh and the other pierced his right lung. Not giving them any opportunity to catch their breaths, Hoka appeared behind Chu and took his stance, 8 trigrams. A 16 palms he attacked her. At the same time, Miko flickered in front of them and threw multiple shurikens at Shunji in close range. The other 3 chunnings realized that they were being slow and came forward to attack too. Shu looked at Hoka with a grim face. He had already managed to hit her once. If he did again, then she would become an easy kill for Renjiro. She diverted all her attention to him and blocked his palms, not allowing even one to hit her. However, Shunji, who was injured, couldn't resist much. He got hit by multiple shurikens. After blocking Hoka, Shu pushed him behind and looked at Shunji. Unfortunately, what she saw didn't bring her any comfort. 5 shurikens were embedded in his body. Worse, Fujin was just next to him and swinging his sword at his neck. Shu's expression became fierce. She decided, "You want to kill him? All right, kill him. But I will skin all 3 of you." She made a hand sign. Hoka and Miko were about to press on their attack when they saw Fujin's chakra flowing through his sword. They immediately moved backwards. The 3 chunins who were running towards them stopped on seeing them retreat. She also noticed it. But like the 3 chunins, she assumed that they were retreating due to her preparing a jutsu. With just one target in front of her, Shu blew hot corrosive steam at both Fujin and Shunji. Boil release solid fog jutsu. At the same time, Fujin's sword reached Shunji's neck and cut off his head. Shu watched with anger in her eyes. She wanted Fujin to scream in pain from that jutsu. However, her eyes widened after Fujin cut Shunji's head. A flying sword slash formed in the air and rushed towards her. The flying slash was accompanied by winds that dispersed the steam. Shu recognized that it looked like the way samurais attacked. She immediately jumped. However, the distance between them was too small. The slash hit her legs slightly above her knees. Both her legs were severed. The winds around the slash created cuts all over her thighs and abdomen. She watched her severed legs with wide eyes. She couldn't believe how easily she got defeated. Chapter 122 Overkill. Hoka and Miko looked into each other's eyes. Though Fujin severed her legs, Shu was still alive. Their competitive spirits rose and both wanted the killing hit. They immediately moved towards Shu. Miko attacked with shurikens and kunais with explosion tags, while Hoka attacked with vacuum bomb. Fujin noticed both his teammates and attacked too. He swung his sword vertically, sending a flying slash aiming at splitting her in 2 vertically. Renjiro, who was looking at his students with pride, was suddenly dumbfounded. He thought in his mind, "She has already lost her legs. We can capture her and get information from her. Why do you want to kill her so badly?" The 8 other chunnings who were looking were also dumbfounded at how aggressive the 3 kids were. Shu also watched with wide eyes. She may have lost her team and her legs, but she didn't want to die. She made a few hand signs quickly. She encased herself within the water prison jutsu. Hoka's attack reached first. It pierced into the water prison, but Chu moved backwards within the water prison, and the attack passed harmlessly through the water prison. Miko's attacks hit next. The shurikens were blocked by the water, but the explosion created some disturbances. However, the water prison jutsu still held. Fujin's slash arrived last. It easily cut the water prison in 2. However, Shu moved to one side of the water prison to avoid getting hit. The winds accompanying the slash were also dulled by the water. However, the slash finally dispelled the water prison jutsu. Shu fell on the ground in a bad way. Despite her horrible state, she still got up with the help of her hands. Fujin, Hoka, and Miko were about to make a move when Renjiro flickered right behind her. He hit the back of her head and knocked her unconscious. He looked at his students and said, "If you can take them hostage in a convenient situation, do that. Don't go for the kill just for being competitive." That immediately made his students feel embarrassed. They didn't reply and moved forward. The 5 chunins who were hiding also came out as the fight was over. The 7 chunins who arrived later felt a bit embarrassed as they didn't contribute anything. Most of the work was done by kids less than half their age. Only Hotoka smiled, thinking, "Now they will know how I felt." They all observed Chu. She was lying unconscious on her front steed. Her legs were severed. They were bleeding a lot. There were many cuts on her thighs and abdomen. Her clothes were almost non-existent. Rinjiro opened a scroll and summoned a seal from it. He put the seal on Chu's back and made a hand sign. The seal immediately spread on her entire body. Fujin looked at it and asked, "Is this chakra suppression seal?" Rinjiro nodded and said, "Yes. When she wakes up, she won't be able to access her chakra until I or a seal master removes it." Fujin saw Chu's chakra getting sealed while thinking, "I thought only Jiraiya made these for Naruto. I guess he just made an advanced one as normal ones might not work on Jin Hyukaris." Renjiro looked at the patrol teams and asked, "Are any of you a medical ninja?" A ninja stepped forward and said, "Yes, I can use mystical palm jutsu." Renjiro moved aside and said, "Stop her bleeding." The medical ninja moved forward and used mystical palm jutsu on her wounds. Since there were a lot of cuts on her body, he needed quite some time to heal her. After stopping the bleeding, he bandaged her body. While he was healing her, Miko asked Renjiro-sensei, "Since we aren't injured, we can undertake the next part of the mission too, right?" Hoka and Fujin immediately looked at Renjiro. Renjiro nodded and said, "Yes, we will take a rest tomorrow to recover our chakra. Then we will move towards the land of hot water on the day after tomorrow." Miko grinned on hearing that. Most chonins never get to go on a rank A mission. However, she would have 3 under her belt. Hoka and Fujin smiled as well. Fighting against real ninjas was a lot more fun as compared to bandits. Renjiro looked at his happy students and said, "For now, store their bodies." They nodded and stored the bodies of the 3 dead ninjas. After storing, they handed all the scrolls to Renjiro, who stored them all in one single scroll. After the medical ninja was done healing Chu, Renjiro asked, "How long will she be out?" The medical ninja thought for a bit and replied, "She has lost a lot of blood. She will be out for at least a few hours." Renjiro thought for a bit and said, "All right, carry her to the command outpost. We will come along with you." He nodded and lifted Chu and put her on his back. The 12 Konoha ninjas ran back towards the outpost where they met Akimichi Saichi. On reaching the outpost, Renjiro looked at one of the chunins and said, "Call Saichi back here." The chunin nodded and left. Renjiro looked at the medical ninja who was carrying Chu and said, "Restrain her to a chair and gag her so that she doesn't try to kill herself by biting her tongue." The medical ninja nodded and entered the outpost. After a few minutes, Saichi returned to the outpost as well along with 3 other ninjas. Saichi looked at Renjiro thinking, "Why are they back so quickly?" He looked at Renjiro and asked, "Did you find any of them?" Renjiro nodded and replied, "Yes, both intruding squads have been dealt with. The one with the 6 members is all dead, and we took the commanding Junin from the 2nd squad as a prisoner. The remaining are dead." Saichi was shocked on hearing that, and Inuzuka Chunin standing behind him blurted in disbelief, "No way, we have been hunting them for over 2 days and didn't manage to do anything at all. How did you neutralize them in under 2 hours?" Renjiro and his students glared at the Chunin who said that. Realizing his mistake, he quickly said, "Apologies, I didn't mean that." Renjiro ignored him. Saichi looked at his subordinate and thought, what he said was improper. Except, I was going to say the same thing. I can understand Renjiro annihilating one squad, but how were both neutralized so soon? Renjiro smirked, noticing his former teammate's expression. He handed him a scroll and said, "It contains the dead bodies of those 9 ninjas. The last one is restrained inside." Saichi sighed and took the scroll. He said in a defeated tone, "Even at this age you continue to surprise me." Renjiro laughed and replied, "Well, in this case it was mostly my students. Anyways, my students are tired. Can you make sleeping arrangements for them?" Saichi nodded and looked at one of his subordinates. The subordinate immediately made sleeping arrangements for the trio. Fujin, Hoka, and Miko all ate a few ration bars and fell asleep. They had rushed a long distance and fought 2 battles on the same day. Chapter 123, Exploring the Patrol Outpost. While his students went to sleep, Renjiro decided to catch up with his old friend. He and Saichi chatted for a long while, recalling their old memories and sharing their new ones. After chatting, Renjiro made a report and attached it to a messenger hawk. The hawk flew towards Konoha. After a long sleep, the trio woke up. They freshened up and met up with Renjiro, who was having breakfast with Saichi. Saichi looked at them and said, "Come join in." Having learnt a lot about them from Renjiro, Saichi had a much better impression of them. The trio didn't engage in any formalities and joined them. However, on seeing the food on the table, all three had the same thought: how the heck is this a breakfast? The entire table was filled with roasted meat. Fujin grabbed one slice and ate it. His expression immediately changed. "Fuck, this is so good." He ignored everyone and began eating rapidly. Hoka and Miko looked at Fujin and grabbed a bite too. They too began eating quickly but paid attention to their manners. Saichi laughed lightly on seeing them all eat quickly and said, "No need to hurry. The food isn't going to run away." All three nodded. Saichi smiled on seeing them nod obediently. However, soon he was speechless. All three kids ignored his advice and kept eating at the same speed. Renjiro chuckled at Saichi's reaction. Fujin meanwhile thought, "An Akimichi saying the food won't run away. As if anyone would believe that." After eating, Fujin asked, "What do we do today, sensei?" Renjiro replied, "Just rest. Take a tour of the patrol outposts and go on patrols if you get bored. It'll be helpful if in the future you get posted for patrol duties. Don't waste your chakra though, we need to leave tomorrow morning." Fujin replied, "Oh, all right, sensei." He thought, "I never thought about the ninjas who are out for patrol. I wonder how many ninjas are deployed like this." After thinking a bit, he concluded, "Probably not a lot considering the vast number of bandits in this country. The job seems boring, though it could be a good way to explore this country." Saichi called for Hotaka, who arrived soon. He said, "Since you guys fought together yesterday, I'll leave you guys under his care. Hotaka, show them the outpost and how patrol teams work." Hotaka replied, "Sure, Saichi-sama." He looked at the trio and said, "Come with me." Fujin, Miko and Hoka followed him. As Hotaka showed them around, Hiruzen read the report sent by Renjiro. A worry formed on his face as he analyzed. The civil war inside Kiri is spilling into other countries. There might be more such incidents in the future. I should deploy some ambush squads along the coastline. He looked at an ambu ninja hiding in his office. Realizing that the Hokage needed him, he appeared in front of Hiruzen. Hiruzen commanded, "Call Hound and his ambu squad." The ambu ninja nodded and flickered. Hotaka led the trio around the patrol outpost. He said, "This is the command outpost for Konoha's eastern borders. This is why it is so big and well maintained. There are many smaller outposts all over the country, but they only have the basic facilities." Fujin thought, "No wonder this outpost is big. I only expected there to be one house at max." Hotaka showed them around the important locations in the outpost and introduced them to some of his friends. In the end, they climbed on a watchtower. On reaching the top, the trio admired the scenery around them. The houses in the outpost were arranged symmetrically, and it was surrounded by lush green forests. To add to it, the sun had just begun rising, so rays of sunlight traveled right above the trees. Fujin, Miko and Hoka felt incredible calmness on seeing this sight. Fujin thought, "What a sight. Perhaps after the whole Kaguya mess is over, I should tour this world. I wonder what exists in this world apart from the hidden villages." Seeing the three kids lost in the scenery, Hotaka smiled and didn't say anything. After some time, they stopped looking at it. Miko said, "I didn't think we would get to see such a beautiful sight in a patrol outpost." Hoka added, "Yeah, this feels wonderful." Fujin nodded. Hotaka laughed and said, "Such sceneries are the main reason why most here have taken patrolling tasks. Beautiful scenery, freedom from daily worries at home and lax responsibilities are the plus points of this job. Situations like yesterday are rare in peacetime. Usually, we just go on routine patrols without finding any disturbances." Fujin looked at Hotaka and wondered, "So how did so many ninja cross into the land of fire during our last mission? Did the patrol teams just do a terrible job or were some of them bribed? There is another possibility. Did Konoha purposefully let them in so that they could be annihilated without any opportunity to run?" Ahoki asked Hotaka, "Can you take us to patrol?" Hoka wanted to know as many of his seniors and elders from the Hyuga clan often undertook patrol missions. Hotaka nodded, "Sure, let's go." He jumped off the watchtower. Hoka, Miko and Fujin followed him. They left the outpost and entered the forests and ran on tree branches at moderate speeds. Hotaka said, "I am just taking you on a random patrolling mission. Usually, all patrol teams have set routes that they have to patrol daily, and there are a few teams that patrol randomly to guard against someone who might know our patrol routes and uses that to avoid us." Hoka said, "That's smart. That will make hiding very difficult." Hotaka nodded and added, in addition, every patrol team has one ninja from Inuzuka, Hyuga or Aburami clans, so our range is much larger and any intruder has to consider all aspects if they want to hide from us. The trio nodded. They were aware of the specialties of each clan. Hotaka took them on a 2-hour-long patrol. Fujin and Hoka used their abilities to help Hotaka on the patrol mission. But they didn't find anything out of the ordinary. They returned back to the outpost. Not having anything to do, they spent their remaining day meditating. During lunch and breakfast, they interacted with others in the outpost. In the evening, an Ambu squad entered the outpost. They entered the main building. Rinjuro and Saichi were playing shogi. They both turned to see 4 Ambu ninjas. The leader of the 4 had silver hair and wore a kitsune mask. Both realized who the Ambu captain was. Chapter 124 Interrogation. Kakashi looked at the 2 Junins and stepped forward. He handed them a letter and said, "The Hokage has assigned us the mission to escort the prisoner and carry the dead bodies back to Konoha." Rinjuro and Soichi nodded. Rinjuro took out a scroll and handed it to Kakashi and said, "The bodies of the 9 dead ones are in this scroll." Kakashi took the scroll and stored it properly. Saichi got up and said, "Follow me, I'll take you to the prisoner." Kakashi and his squad followed Saichi and Rinjuro. They entered a small room. At the center of this room was a chair. A woman was sitting in it. Her arms were tied to the arms of the chair. Her legs were missing. A gag was stuffed in her mouth. Her head had dropped down. She was being watched by 2 chunings. One of them was a medical ninja. Rinjuro said, "We investigated her a bit. Her name is Chu and she is a Junin from the Sakai clan. She can use the boil release." Saichi added, "We injected her with anesthesia, but her body is very resistant to it. She wakes up after 2 hours and has to be injected again." Kakashi nodded and said, "That won't be an issue. Can you wake her up?" The medical ninja stepped forward and began waking up. He looked at one of his squad members and said, "Ferret, put her to sleep." After some time, Chu woke up. She looked at Renjuro and the Ambu ninjas. A terrified look appeared in her eyes. Itachi, who was the Ambu with the codename Ferret, stepped in front of her and looked into her eyes. Shu looked at the Ambu in front of her as his eyes turned red. Itachi cast a genjutsu on her, making her fall into a deep sleep. Itachi stepped back and said, "It's done. She won't wake up for a day." Kakashi nodded. He looked at Renjuro and said, "We will be taking her. Thank you for completing the mission. There are further orders from Lord Hokage. Her capture shouldn't be talked about. Discuss with everyone who knows that she has been captured and tell them to not talk about it to anyone, if they have already spoken to others or anyone knows about her capture. Then chat with them as well and impose a gagging order. Lord Hokage has said that this is very important." Soichi replied, "My men haven't met with anyone else, but probably everyone in the outpost knows about her. I will talk with them and impose a gagging order about this." Kakashi nodded and said, "Thank you." One of Kakashi's Ambu subordinates untied Chu and carried her. Kakashi and his squad took their leave and left for Konoha. Fujin and his teammates would remain ignorant about the terrible fate awaiting the Junin captured by them. They slept peacefully as Chu was carried to Konoha. They woke up early the next morning and assembled with Renjuro. Soichi got up early as well to bid farewell to them. He said, "See you later, Renjuro. Stop by here while returning to Konoha." Renjuro nodded. "Sure, we could use a good sleep." Saichi looked at the kids and smiled. "Take care all of you, come back safely." Miko replied, "Don't worry, we will complete the mission in no time." Fujin nodded and added, "Just make that roasted meat again when we are back." Saichi sweat-dripped, thinking, "These 3 ate half my share yesterday." He smiled and said, "I'll be sure to hunt some wild beasts for you guys." They said goodbyes and left for the land of hot water, while Team Renjuro was headed to the land of hot water. Kakashi and his squad returned to Konoha. They imprisoned her in the TI department. Ibiki waited with them in the prison. Understanding the importance, Hiruzen himself showed up. Seeing Hiruzen, all 4 Ambu respectfully greeted him. "Lord Hokage." Hiruzen nodded and looked at Chu. He looked at Itachi and said, "Wake her up from the genjutsu and place her under a new one. I want to interrogate her." At that time, another person entered the prison. He was an old man. His right arm was concealed within and hanging inside his black robe. His right eye was bandaged. Hiruzen looked at him and asked, "Danzo, why are you here?" Danzo looked at Chu and said, "I heard about taking a prisoner from Kiri. Continue your interrogation. I will discuss it with you later." Hiruzen nodded and looked at Itachi. Itachi stepped forward and dispelled the genjutsu. She woke up and looked up. However, Itachi put her in another genjutsu. After she fell into the genjutsu, Itachi removed the gag stuffed in her mouth. He looked at Hiruzen and said, "You can ask her questions." Lord Hokage, Hiruzen looked at Ibiki and said, "Ask her about why they entered the Land of Fire." Ibiki nodded and asked Chu, "Why did your squad enter the Land of Fire?" Chu answered, "My team was on a mission in the Land of Water. Unfortunately, we were discovered by a squad from Mizukage's faction. They chased us relentlessly. We clashed a few times and were injured. The chase brought us close to the Land of Fire, and we entered it hoping to find a good hiding place till they left us. I didn't think they would chase us inside the Land of Fire as well." Ibiki noted what she said. He asked, "What was your mission?" Shu answered, "We got information that the Karatachi family had documents and maps that showed where all the ninjas in the Mizukage faction were deployed, since the family head of Karatachi was in a battle. We got a mission to steal those documents. The mission parameters surprised everyone in the room. Danzo immediately wanted to get his hands on those documents." Ibiki asked, "Did you complete the mission?" Shu answered, "Yes, we stole the documents successfully." Ibiki asked, "Where are those documents?" Shu answered, "Since we were being chased, we hid them in a secure location in the Land of Water." Ibiki asked, "Will anyone be collecting those documents?" Shu answered, "There is one ninja who checks that spot frequently. By now it would have been collected and reached the hands of the Sakai clan patriarch." Ibiki asked her where the secure location was and noted it down. Ibiki asked, "Did you see the locations where the forces of the Mizukage faction are located?" Shu answered, "No." After asking, he looked at Hiruzen. Hiruzen said, "Ask her about the situation of the Sakai clan, other bloodline clans and the current state of the conflict. Also, ask her about their current hideouts and where the clans are located." Danzo added, "Also ask her if they have hidden some family members in safe locations." Ibiki nodded and began questioning. He ended up questioning Chu for over 3 hours. Konoha got information about the locations of bloodline clans, locations of some of their secret hideouts, the number of ninjas they had, the losses they faced, the losses they inflicted upon the Mizukage faction, skills and weaknesses of their strongest fighters, and some other miscellaneous information. While the information she provided wasn't complete, she ended up providing a lot of valuable information to Konoha. The rebel faction of Kirigujka would have never imagined that their mission to steal information from the Mizukage faction would result in their secrets getting exposed to Konoha. Chapter 125 Horrible Fate. After getting all the information, Chu was restrained again. Hiruzen looked at the ambush squad and Ibiki and said, "Good work. Don't tell anyone about her being taken as captive to anyone." They nodded and left the prison. While leaving, Itachi's face was grim, though no one noticed it under his mask, or rather, no one apart from Hiruzen and Danzo, who observed him carefully. Understanding the disastrous consequences of civil war made him realize the catastrophe that would fall on Konoha if the Uchiha clan were to rebel. It planned to decide to avoid a civil war at all costs inside his heart. As he left, both Hiruzen and Danzo exchanged eye contact. Danzo understood why Hokage had assigned the squad Itachi was in on this mission. They didn't speak about Itachi as no words needed to be spoken. Danzo looked at Hiruzen and said, "She provided a lot of information. We need to cross-check with the information provided by our spies to confirm that there were no traps hidden in the information." Hiruzen nodded and replied, "Send a root ninja who has the information to my office. I will have him cross-check our information with an Anbu ninja." Danzo nodded. He looked at Hiruzen, who seemed to be in thought. Danzo asked, "What are you thinking about?" Hiruzen looked at him and replied, "Do you remember the proposal that we received from the rebel faction before the Chunin exams?" Danzo nodded. Hiruzen continued, "I thought it was weird that the Tarumi clan patriarch reached out to us. Now it seems like it was the idea of Tarumi Mai. She has the bloodline of both Tarumi as well as Sakai clans, and is able to use 2 Keki Genkai. Looks like she will be the next leader in Kiri." Danzo replied, "Yes, it was likely her. 2 Keki Gentai in the same person isn't threatening if they don't train well, but her leadership skills and charisma are good as well. She might become a threat. We should eliminate her." Hiruzen shook his head and replied, "The 4th Mizukage is a perfect Jinwekuric. He will be difficult to defeat. Let them exhaust each other's potential. Konoha doesn't need to involve itself and suffer any losses. After the civil war ends, we will talk with the winner." Danzo wanted to argue, but Hiruzen had made a good point. With the losses Kiri had taken due to the civil war, Kiri would be in no position to participate in a war for over a decade at least. Hiruzen looked at Danzo and felt something odd, knowing Danzo. He predicted that he would have started a debate there. He asked, "Why are you here? It wouldn't be just for the information, right?" Danzo looked at Chu and said, "I want Sakai Chu." Hiruzen looked at Danzo in confusion. However, in less than a second his eyes widened. He declined no. However, this time Danzo would not relent. This was the true reason why he visited the prison. He said, "Hiruzen, there are only 2 clans that have Keki Genkai and Konoha, and one of them is about to rebel, with the Senju being unable to produce any wood Keke Genkai ninja. We need to recruit other Keki Genkai into our village, and they have to be loyal to Konoha. If we don't strengthen ourselves, then every time we have a weak moment, an incident similar to the Hyude incident will keep repeating. Now that our forces are getting stabilized, we need to do everything to make ourselves stronger." Danzo's argument struck a chord in Hiruzen's heart. The Hyuga incident hurt him a lot. The weak state of Konoha had made him indecisive and reluctant, and that cost Konoha an innocent life. Danzo didn't speak anymore. He knew Hiruzen very well. Hiruzen thought for a few minutes and said, "If the other villagers were to realize, they might attack Konoha together." Danzo scoffed and replied, "In every war, we keep getting attacked by all 4 villages, so it doesn't make a difference. Also, I will induct the kids into the route, so they won't be exposed to the world. Even inside Konoha, no one will know their origin. Besides, awakening Keki Genkai is difficult. Very few awaken it. If someone awakens, we will expose the first one who awakens and say that he created the Keki Genkai by combining fire and water natures. If anyone awakens it after him, we will hide that person inside the root." If Fujin was to hear this conversation, he'd be shocked. After all, he thought that a Keki Genkai can only be inherited through the bloodline. Without it, there was no way to be able to use a Keki Genkai. After all, even talented ninjas who had mastered all elements like Hiruzen and Kakashi never learned any Keki Genkai. Hiruzen sighed. He thought, "He has done thorough preparation. I don't think I can win this debate. So, what to do?" He thought for a bit and finally looked at Sakurai Chu. He sighed. "She is already a waste. If we release her, she will hate Konoha with all her heart and use all her influence to make her clan take an anti-Konoha stance. If the bloodline clans win, our relationship will be sour." Looking at Hiruzen, Danzo understood what he was thinking. He said, "The way ahead will be to deny meeting the squad from the rebel faction. We will deny knowing their existence, remove their mentions from the reports. If the bloodline faction wins in Kiri and asks us about it, we will feign ignorance and push the blame on the Mizukage faction. Since the squad from the Mizukage faction died at the hands of Konoha ninjas, we can even claim that we took revenge for the bloodline faction. So we will be able to use this incident to better our relations. However, for that to happen, she needs to disappear." Hiruzen sighed again and agreed, "All right, but ensure that no information about her leaks out, and all the progress has to be reported to me in secret." Danzo nodded. He was about to leave when he had a thought. He stopped and asked Hiruzen, which team was assigned this mission. They were very thorough. Danzo had rushed here in a hurry, so he wasn't aware which squad had undertaken this mission. Hiruzen answered, "It was Senju Renjuro and his students." Danzo's left eye widened, but it returned to normal quickly. He said, "They are efficient. I want to induct them into the route." Hiruzen raised his left eyebrow and looked at Danzo. However, he couldn't figure out anything from his poker face. Hiruzen replied, "One of his students is a Hyuga. They are not suitable for the route. Another is a new Uchiha who is arrogant even by their standards. Good luck convincing her into joining the route." Danzo scoffed in displeasure. However, that was an act. He was interested in the wind user. While speaking, Hiruzen realized that Danzo's target should be Fujin. The others were just spoken as a distraction. Hiruzen continued, "The third one is a civilian orphan. He could have been inducted into the route. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's too late." Danzo, who was hopeful about getting Fujin, felt like Hiruzen had played with him. He asked, "Why is it late? He isn't even a teenager yet." "Well, it's true that the route mostly inducts 5-6 years old kids. We can still recruit older ones." Hiruzen shook his head and said, "That boy's too headstrong. He wouldn't agree to have any seal put on him. He won't be a good match for the route. Besides, I already have plans for him." Danzo raised his left eyebrow and asked, "What plans?" Hiruzen smirked and answered, "I will be inducting him into the Ambu and training him to be a negotiator for Konoha." Danzo had a lot of thoughts about what Hiruzen might say. However, this one left him dumbfounded. Chapter 126 Dodged a bullet. Danzo stared at Hiruzen. After half a minute he said, Hiruzen, the role of negotiator is for senior members in the village. Experience is important. What do you mean by sending someone who hasn't even entered his teens to represent Konoha during negotiations? Hiruzen chuckled and replied, our current negotiators are either too soft or too strict. While we do find a middle ground, we usually get the short end of the stick. Danzo scoffed and accused, it's your fault for being so soft, don't accuse the rest of us. Hiruzen shook his head and replied, and your methods are way too harsh. We would be at war all the time if your ideas are followed, and of course I won't send someone inexperienced to do the final negotiations for us. He will be among the first round of negotiators. And his task will be to annoy them just enough that the negotiations still stay on the table, and we will have an advantage when we negotiate later. Danzo was surprised by Hiruzen's words and confidence. He wondered, what exactly did Hiruzen see in that boy? Hiruzen looked at Danzo and thought, on second thought, the prospect of sending Fujin to the route would be hilarious. Danzo tends to make promises while recruiting. If Fujin does enter the route, I wonder how often he will ask Danzo for a new jutsu. Danzo was about to say something when Hiruzen interrupted, leave it, he is off the table, his talent would be wasted in the route. Seeing Hiruzen being stubborn, Danzo nodded and left. If Fujin was to learn about this conversation, he would sigh in relief and comment, phew, barely dodged the bullet. That said, even without Hiruzen denying it, Fujin wouldn't have entered the route. While Danzo led the route and was very influential, he couldn't force anyone to join. He resorted to patriotism, offering rewards, blackmailing with closed ones, or lying in order to recruit existing ninjas to the route. However, neither of these four tactics would have worked on Fujin. While leaving, Danzo thought, that didn't go as expected. I didn't expect Hiruzen to be so stubborn about an orphan. Doesn't matter, I was only slightly interested in him due to his potential in wind nature manipulation. There's no point in wasting more effort on him. Danzo left and didn't think about Fujin again. Years later, he would hear about Fujin's exploits in the battlefields. In one such battle, Fujin's fame would explode throughout the ninja world. That battle would make Danzo regret not trying hard enough to recruit him. And the biggest regret would be when he dies by the hands of the orphan he attached no importance to. Team Renjuro ran at full speed for around 7 hours. The borders of the land of hot water were close to where the hideout was, while the hot spring hidden village was quite far away. The town that they were headed to was in the southern part of the land of hot water, hence, it was much closer to them. After 7 hours, they entered Niigata town. On entering, Fujin commented, we entered into another country and then into their second biggest town, and still haven't encountered even one ninja. Do they not have ninjas, or are they too lazy to patrol? Renjuro chuckled and answered, only the 5 big hidden villages maintain frequent patrols. Even among the 5 big villages, Kiri and Suna don't do regular patrols due to the harsh terrain. In smaller villages, only the VIPs have good protection. If common people are in danger, then they issue missions to villages like ours. Fujin thought for a bit. He put up a sad face and said, I see, but in that case, the lives of the common people here are very vulnerable. They have no protection. Any rogue ninja can kill them and run away. If he hides well, then they won't even get justice. Renjuro looked at Fujin for a few seconds. He sighed and replied, unfortunately, that is the world we live in. There is nothing we can do. Fujin showed a sad face and didn't reply. Renjuro thought, although he is greedy, Fujin has a good heart. At the same time, Fujin thought, I don't think I can get any more jutsus from Renjuro, but improving my image even more would be beneficial. It might be of help if I need something from Tsunade in the future. She's of the same clan after all. Miko and Hoka watched Fujin and Renjuro. They began thinking about the sad state of affairs in the smaller villages as well. They began walking towards the center of the town. Renjuro said, well, no need to be entirely down. Though there isn't much protection, the major towns have a garrison. Perhaps every town might have a garrison in the future. That would provide a good degree of protection to them. Fujin nodded and said, yeah, that could be a good start. They reached the center of the town. A mansion stood there. On seeing them, a watchman immediately invited them in while his partner ran inside to inform someone. The watchman said, welcome, Tokuhi-sama has been expecting you. Renjuro nodded and followed him inside the mansion. On entering, a large man appeared in front of them. He was 7 feet 5 inches in height and was very fat. Seeing him, the same thought ran through the minds of Fujin, Miko, and Hoka. Did an Akimichi migrate here? He is huge even by their standards. Behind him, 4 more people were standing. Tokushita Tokuhi smiled and said, Senju Renjiro, I have heard a lot about you. Renjiro smiled and replied, Tokushita Tokuhi, I have heard about you too. Tokuji said, we were expecting you to arrive a bit sooner. Renjiro replied, we had some troubles too. So we were delayed. Tokuki nodded and looked at the kids behind Renjiro. He frowned and thought, the mission didn't mention any strict timelines, so I can't bug him more about it. But the mission focused more on the strength of the ninjas. Renjiro is strong. But why did they send kids? Renjiro looked at him and understood what he was thinking. But he didn't comment. Explaining the strength of the ninjas who undertook the mission wasn't a requirement. Completing the mission was all that mattered. Tokuhi knew that Renjiro understood his frown. But since he didn't provide any explanation, he decided to drop it while thinking, my own squad should be enough to kill those rogue ninjas. Unfortunately, the daimyo was worried about any losses we might suffer, and hence issued a mission to Konoha. If they are weak, they will die. Renjiro asked, what are the details of those rogue ninjas? Also, where are they currently at? Takudi looked at a subordinate. Takashita Shunso stepped forward. He said, until now, we have detected 13 rogue ninjas. We have calculated that there are 2 more. All of them are ninjas from the land of water. Among the 13 ninjas, there are 3 Junins and 10 Chunings. Their leader is Kubota Mitsusuka. He is a veteran Junin. The others under his command are experienced too. Some of them are ninjas who were assigned under him in the Third Great Ninja War. We haven't found their base, but looking at their movements, we have calculated their base to be near the coastline towards the southeast direction. Renjiro analyzed the information and said, good work, we won't have to waste time to find them. Tokuji said, Renjiro, while we do know their approximate location, we don't know their exact location. Renjiro replied, don't worry, leave that to us. We will take a break today. Tomorrow at 4 am we will leave. Have your team be prepared. Tokuhi wanted to leave immediately, but he understood that they had traveled a long distance. He nodded and said, all right, Shunso, range for their resting area. Shunso led them to the arranged rooms. After he left, Fujin, Miko and Hoka stared at Renjiro. They wanted answers. Chapter 127 Joint Mission. Renjiro looked at his students' faces and chuckled. Miko was annoyed. She asked, why are they coming with us too? Renjiro answered, it's a joint mission. You didn't expect to take on more than a dozen ninjas with just us 4, did you? A scowl formed on Miko's face. Hoka sighed and said, it would have been fun to fight them ourselves. Fujin said, apart from that big guy who has a lot of chakra, the others don't seem that strong, so we should be getting more opportunities to fight than you think. Hoka smiled and said, that's more like it. Renjiro was speechless at his students once again. He thought, did they just hope that their allies fail in completing the mission just so that they get to fight more? He let out a cough to attract their attention and said, take a rest for the day. You need to be in top condition tomorrow morning. The trio nodded. Fujin asked, Sensei, when you take the rank A's missions, do you perform them alone or do you go with a team? Renjiro was surprised by the question. He answered, depends on the mission. For example, in missions like these that include elimination, I have a team. We need members to find them and to ensure that none of them run away. Fujin heard the reply and thought, that makes sense. I guess the solo missions could contain protecting someone secretly or an assassination mission. He looked at Renjiro and asked, Sensei, do you have information regarding Tokudi and Mitsusuka? Renjiro answered, I checked Tokuti's information before taking this mission. He is a veteran Junin and was one of the commanders of the village hidden in hot springs in the previous war. But there isn't much of a record of him fighting. His job was to ensure that they don't get caught in between our and Kumo's clashes. Apart from that, he is known for his earth release and high physical strength. As for Mitsusuka, he specializes in water release like most Kiri ninjas. And he is quick on his feet. I fought him a couple of times in the previous war. Renjiro looked at Fujin and chuckled. His fighting style is actually quite similar to yours. Though he knows a few rank A jutsus, he prefers to indulge in hit and run tactics, and fights from a long range. Miko and Hoka's faces scowled on hearing that. Both snorted and looked at Fujin. Fujin wondered, oh, I wonder how I would fare against him. Miko and Hoka were about to protest. They didn't want Fujin to fight the enemy leader while they dealt with scrubs. However, Renjiro spoke first. Renjiro's face got serious as he spoke. He will be my target. I am confident that I can win against him. But you 3 need to stay on guard. If he manages to slip a water clone away, he will attack you in the back when you are in midst of battle. So keep your guard up all the time. The 3 recognized the seriousness in Renjiro's voice. They nodded their heads immediately. Rinjuro added, just like the last fight, there won't be any weaklings among them, and unlike last time, we won't have the advantage of being in home territory. Also, don't chase them if they manage to escape into the sea. Neither of you three is trained in how to fight a battle in the sea, they agreed. The Kiri ninjas had fought in seas all their life. While they could fight on water, they would be at a disadvantage against Kiri ninjas. Especially as only Hoka had some affinity to the water element. The trio asked for more information from Rinjuro. Rinjuro provided the information he knew as well as warned them about several things they should pay attention to. They also decided on some strategies to follow during the mission. After discussing, they spent the rest of the day doing light warm-ups and meditation. While Team Rinjuro was discussing, Tokundi and his subordinates were discussing as well. While Shunso was showing Team Rinjuro the rooms, Tokundi's subordinates began expressing their displeasure. Seo Shisoku said, "We asked Konoha for strong reinforcements. Why did they send little brats?" Atsuko Nakamura added, "Yes, these brats could get in our way when we fight. If they let their opponents get away, we could end up getting ambushed. Tokuhi-sama, we need to consider this joint mission carefully." Tokuki heard them. He began analyzing the actions of Konoha, saying that he was lost in thoughts. Nakamura called him out again. "Tokuhi-sama." Tokuhi looked at him. He replied, "Let's not jump to conclusions. Konoha has an excellent track record of completing missions. So they might have some plans for sending those kids." His subordinates gave him a weird look. Shisoku said, "Do you really think that those kids will be any useful?" Tokudi shrugged his hands. He answered, "If they weren't, why would Konoha send them? And Rinjuro wasn't bothered when I looked at them skeptically. Besides, we wanted to complete this mission on our own anyways, so their strength doesn't matter much. In fact, if we perform far better than Konoha's squad, then I can persuade the daimyo to increase funding to build a proper ninja force in our country. If we manage to do that, then we won't have to depend on Konoha." The eyes of his subordinates widened. Shisoku said, "That's a great plan, Tokuri-sama." Tokuti nodded and said, "So give your all to this mission. As long as we outperform Renjuro's squad, we will be able to get some benefits from the daimyo." They waited for Shunso to return. When he did, they discussed their strategy and tactics for the next day. The next day, at 3:45 am, Renjuro's and Tokuti's squads gathered in the mansion. Fujin, Hoka and Miko observed Tokuti's squad, in addition to the 4 they saw the day before. There were 3 more Chunin-level ninjas in his squad, along with their own squad. They now had 12 ninjas. Fujin observed them and thought, "As long as we manage to kill a few Kiri ninjas in the initial sneak attack, we should outnumber them, so this might be an easy mission as well." Tokuti looked at Renjuro and smiled. He asked, "Renjuro, did you guys rest well?" Renjuro nodded and replied, "We did. Are you guys prepared?" Tokuti nodded. Renjuro looked at Shunso and asked, "Have you marked the locations on the map?" Shunso nodded and laid a map on the floor. Everyone observed the map carefully. The towns and villages in the land of hot water were marked on the map, and a location was marked on the southeastern coastline. Shunso pointed at the map saying, "This is our current location, according to what we have calculated. Their base is around here, which is around 40 kilometers from our location." Renjuro nodded. He looked at the map once again and then said, "All right, let's move. We will hit them before the sun rises." Some of Tokuhi's subordinates frowned upon hearing that. Shisoku said, "I have something to say." Renjuro looked at him. Tokuhi said, "Go ahead." Shisoku said, "Though we have calculated their current location, we still have to be careful about any traps they may have set up, so we need to proceed slowly and carefully. It would be preferable to attack when the sun rises." Renjuro shook his head and replied, "Don't worry about the traps, we will take care of them. Let's move." Without waiting for their reply, Renjuro turned around and began leaving the mansion. His students followed him while secretly laughing. Shisoku was mad at having his suggestion dismissed so lightly. However, Tokuhi looked at him and shook his head. Soon, they too followed Renjuro. Chapter 128 Pre-Dawn Raid. The entire group exited the town of Niigata stealthily, even if those rogue Kiri ninjas had any spies in the town. They wouldn't notice them leaving. After leaving, they traveled at a fast speed. They covered the initial 30 kilometers very quickly. The Yuga Kurei ninjas, who were looking down on the kids, had solemn faces. They were finding it difficult to keep up with them. It was a big blow to their pride. Renjuro looked at their expressions and chuckled. In his experiences, it was always better for actions to do the talking than explaining with words. They traveled the last 10 kilometers with caution. Hoka and Miko used their dojutsus to check for traps and enemies. Fujin didn't use his chakra field. If the enemy had any sensor, then they would sense Fujin's chakra field and give away their surprise factor. Hoka's Byakugan had no such disadvantage. They reached close to 1 kilometer of the calculated spot when Hoka said, "Stop!" Everyone stopped and looked at him. Hoka moved towards the left as others followed him. After traveling about 100 meters, he stopped. Others stopped behind him. The area in front of Hoka was dyed red in blood. Shunso asked, "Did they have a fight here?" Tokudi bent down and picked up a long hair from the blood. He observed it and said, "Unlikely, they were probably just hunting wild animals. Looks like they got a bear." Fujin observed Tokuhi and thought, "He's able to guess an animal just from a hair that is dyed in blood." Miko activated her Sharingan and observed the surroundings. After some time she said, "Found a trail." Renjuro said, "Good work, take the lead. Also, keep an eye out for traps. Hoka, you keep an eye on traps too, and keep an eye for their base as well." Everyone else, "Don't make unnecessary noise or movements." Everyone nodded. Tokudi commented, "It's very handy to have both the Byakugan and Sharingan in the same squad." Renjuro nodded. They proceeded ahead carefully. Miko's Sharingan observed every detail of the surroundings carefully. She picked up the slightest clues. She observed their trail perfectly. Surprisingly, they didn't encounter any traps. As they kept walking, they left the forest and entered the beach. Miko frowned. She said, "The trail leads into the sea." Renjuro and Tokuti both frowned. If the base of the rogue Kirinins was in the sea, then fighting them would get very tricky. Shunso spoke, "I don't think that their base would be out in the sea. The nearest island from here is around 32 kilometers away. Traveling from that base would be very time-consuming." Everyone looked at Shunso as he spoke. Shunso continued, "So either their base is nearby, or every one of them is a strong Junin who can travel at twice the speeds of a Chunin." Tokudi immediately shook his head. "There's no way that they are all Junins. Kiri would be shaken if that many Junins go rogue." Renjuro said, "There are 2 possibilities. One is that they have a temporary base here and a permanent one on an island, or they just travel on shallow waters instead of moving through the forest to prevent any trail." Tokuhi nodded and said, "Yes, I believe the second one will be the case. They are rogue ninjas after all. They will be afraid of being hunted down." Renjuro nodded. He too believed the same. He said, "Let's go back to the trees. We will move along the coast while Hoka checks for any possible bases." Tokuhi agreed as he thought. The Hyuga can look up to 1,000 meters. From the edge of the forest, he will be able to check for hundreds of meters into the sea. If their base is truly not here, then we will have no choice but to set up an ambush and wait for them. The group went back into the forest, seeing their initial trail. The group decided to go in the same direction. After moving for slightly over a kilometer, Hoka stopped. He said, "Found them. They are staying inside a cave on a hill about a kilometer ahead." Shunso grinned. "They think that they are very smart." Fujin wondered, "If they are hiding in a cave, will Renjuro try to kill them all?" Hoka said, "There are 2 ninjas guarding the entrance to the cave." Renjuro said, "Keep moving ahead. I'll kill them both." Fujin, "Don't attack." Fujin nodded while thinking, "My wind vacuum bullet is good for assassinating. But once it hits, it will alert even a sleeping person due to the trail of destruction it leaves." As they moved ahead, Hoka said, "Other than the 2 guards, there are 14 more ninjas inside. 3 seem to be at the Junin level. Rest are at the Chunin level. They are all sleeping." Renjuro said, "Don't check on them anymore." Hoka didn't understand. He was about to look away from them when he suddenly noticed one of them getting up suddenly. He said, "One of the Junin level ninjas just woke up." Renjuro frowned. He said, "Some ninjas instinctively feel when someone looks at them. Though they can't sense the Byakugan, they can feel that something is wrong. Keep that in mind." After saying that, he suddenly flickered ahead. Instantly, Hoka, Fujin and Miko also flickered. The Yuga Kurei ninjas, who were alongside them, were dumbfounded. Shisoku exclaimed, "What the fuck?" A scowl formed on Tokuhi's face. He said, "Keep up." He made a few hand signs and flickered as well. Others soon followed him. Inside the cave, Kubota Mitsusuka was sleeping. However, when Hoka observed him, his eyes suddenly opened up. He immediately got up and checked his surroundings. On seeing that no one was around, he thought, "What the fuck? I swear that someone was fucking looking at me." Thoughts ran inside his mind at the speed of light. He immediately came to the conclusion, "Fucking Hyuga. Those cowards should have issued a mission to Konoha." He got up and gathered chakra on his right foot and stamped his foot on the ground. A wave passed through the ground. It was harmless, but everyone inside the cave felt it. All the 13 rogue ninjas woke up. Mitsusuka flickered towards one of the two Junins. On arriving, he shouted, "Fumimaro, quickly check our surroundings." At the same time, the other rogue ninjas also began arriving at their location. Kubota Mitsusuka moved very rapidly, however, there was someone who moved even faster. Rinjiro flickered thrice in quick succession and reached just around 150 meters from the guards. On reaching here, he noticed that there were a few traps set close to the cave. However, he didn't pay any attention to them. He stepped on the ground and disappeared inside it. A second later, 8 earth spears formed under the 2 unsuspecting guards and pierced them. The guards were shocked. However, even before they could let out a scream, Rinjiro appeared from the ground and beheaded them in one smooth action. As soon as he beheaded them, Hoka, Miko and Fujin appeared behind him. While they were running, Hoka noticed the traps. Miko took the lead to avoid them, and the other 2 followed her. On reaching, they noticed the cave. It was a small hill that was as tall as a 3-story building. There was a giant cave mouth at the bottom which split into a few paths. This hill was around 200 meters from the beach. The rogue ninjas chose this spot so that they won't be visible to anyone who scouts for them from the sea, but still be close to the sea if they needed to escape. As soon as they stepped there, they felt a ground wave passing under their feet. Hoka checked the inside of the cave. He frowned and said, "Everyone is up." Rinjiro made a hand sign and said, "I figured." Fujin, Hoka and Miko watched their sensei as he built up a massive amount of chakra. Behind Team Rinjiro, the Yuga-Kurei ninjas were following. However, without the Byakugan, or the Sharingan, they couldn't identify all the traps. Tokuki was the first one to notice the traps. He shouted, "Wait, there are traps ahead." However, they were flickering rapidly. 3 of their ninjas ended up activating traps. Immediately, hundreds of needles rained down on them. Tokuki frowned and made a few hand signs. Inside the cave, Fumimaro spread his chakra field. Fujin felt his chakra field as it expanded past the cave. He quickly said, "They sensed us." Fumimaro immediately sensed the huge chakra built up by Renjiro. He yelled, "Crap, they are right outside the cave and are about to attack us." All the former Kirinins immediately had grim looks on their faces. Ever since they went rogue, they never had to fight against a proper ninja squad. The Mizukage faction was too busy fighting the rebels. They didn't have the time to pay any attention to them. Renjiro put his palms on the walls of the hill. Earth Release Mountain Destroyer Jutsu. Chapter 129 Chaos Inside the Hill. Earth Release Mountain Destroyer Jutsu. Chakra poured from Renjiro's palms into the hill. The hill began collapsing. In merely 3 seconds, the entire hill collapsed. The rogue Kirinins felt the ground under them trembling. In a second, some rocks began falling. Their expressions grew grim. By then, only 11 ninjas had assembled there. 3 still hadn't made it to that room. They understood that they needed to escape. However, escaping to the cave entrance would be very dangerous. Realizing their grim situation, Mitsusuka made a hand sign. Immediately, a water prison began forming around them. He shouted, "Pour your fucking chakra into this jutsu, everyone." The rogue ninjas wasted no time and immediately began pouring their chakra into Mitsusuka's water prison jutsu. The water prison became larger and denser as a result of everyone's chakra. Rocks kept falling on it but didn't damage it. However, the first critical time was when the ground under them collapsed. The water prison sphere also fell, and maintaining its form became very difficult. Through everyone's desperate efforts, they managed to hold on. The second critical time was when the water prison hit the ground after falling. This time, they didn't manage to maintain the sphere. The impact on the ground coupled with the rocks falling on it broke the jutsu. However, 4 ninjas used water barrier jutsu to provide protection. Outside the hill, while the hill was collapsing, the Yuga-Kurei ninjas were struggling with the traps. Tokuli erected earth walls to protect everyone. The ninjas themselves used kunais to block incoming needles. They managed to withstand the barrage. Tokuhi breathed in relief when one of them fell to the ground. Shunso immediately moved towards him. He checked him. Others gathered around him. Shunso said, "He's all right, it's just 2 needles that hit his thighs." He removed the needles and observed them. The others got worried, thinking that the needles were poisoned. After checking the needles and the fallen ninja, Shunso said, "The needles are coated with some anesthetic medicine. He will probably sleep for some time." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Tokudi said, "Shunso, stay here and keep him safe. Others follow me. It looks like they have already begun fighting. We can't be left out." Fujin, Hoka and Miko got the front row seat to watch a small hill collapse. However, they weren't very surprised. By now, they had seen a lot of crazy stunts that Renjiro kept pulling. All three immediately focused on the rogue ninjas inside the debris. Fujin spread his chakra field to sense them. There was no more need for maintaining stealth. He made a few hand signs and prepared a wind vacuum bullet. Hoka and Miko got ready as well. Inside the collapsed hill, there was chaos. The 11 who were together managed to avoid critical injuries. However, most of them had minor injuries due to pieces of rocks falling on them. One Chunin had a minor concussion. However, the 3 who weren't along with them suffered. 2 of them specialized in the water element, while the last one specialized in the earth element. All 3 had woken up due to the ground wave produced by Mitsusuka. However, they were deep in sleep and woke up a few seconds later. By the time they began moving, the hill had already begun collapsing. They didn't understand. Similar thoughts ran through their minds. What the hell happened? We were having the time of our life before we went to sleep. Why is this happening? That too right after we left that shithole. The 2 water affinity ninjas tried protecting themselves, but they were crushed by the rocks. The earth affinity ninja tried going underground. However, the ground under him itself crumbled. But he still managed to build an earth dome to protect himself just in time. He got buried under the debris but stayed alive. Even before the 2 sides had met in combat, Renjuro had almost killed a quarter of their numbers. On seeing his efficiency, Fujin had just one thought. Need a team, my ass. Renjuro made another hand sign and slammed his palms on the ground. Hearth release 1000 Needles Jutsu. On seeing Renjuro perform another jutsu, his students once again had the same thought running through their minds. They thought, please leave one for us too, sensei. At the same time, Mitsusuka made a few hand signs. Water release water shock bomb. He spat out a jet of water that hit the debris on top of them. On contact, it exploded and sent the debris flying over. It created a hole for them to escape. However, at that very instant, hundreds of earth needles formed in the ground around them and instantly shot at them. All of them noticed it, however, at varying speeds. The ones who noticed the needles forming jumped up the hole immediately. 6 of them managed to jump safely out of the range of the needles. 3 got cut by a few needles that just cut across their flesh. 1 had a dozen needles stabbing him, but none were critical. However, the last one was unfortunate. He was the slowest to notice and jump. He got turned into a pincushion and died. He didn't die alone. The last member of the rogue group who wasn't with them also died to the 1000 Needles Jutsu. He had trapped himself inside an earth dome and had no way to get out or defend himself quickly. The number of rogue ninjas dropped to 10, and yet their misery wasn't over. As soon as they jumped out, they still had to protect themselves from the sneak attacks of the students of the man who made them miserable. The first person to leave the hole was Mitsusuka. As soon as he left the hole, he saw 3 shurikens targeting him. He quickly deflected them and looked at where the shurikens came from. His eyes landed on Renjuro and widened. He exclaimed, "Motherfucker, send you Renjuro." As soon as the rogue nins left the hole, they were greeted by shurikens thrown by Miko with pinpoint accuracy. Miko targeted the first 2 who left the debris. Both were Junins, and they easily blocked her shurikens. Unlike Miko, both Hoka and Fujin could only select one to attack. Hoka felt ambitious. He decided to target a Junin, whereas Fujin decided to be efficient. Hoka ended up choosing Fumimaro as his target. Fumimaro was the 3rd one to leave the debris. Hoka aimed a vacuum bomb at his heart. Fumimaro sensed Hoka attacking him. He spat out a water bullet to counter it. It clashed with the vacuum bomb and nullified it. Fujin targeted the 5th person to leave the debris. His chakra was higher than an average Chunin. Guessing him to be an elite Chunin, Fujin chose him. As soon as he appeared, Fujin shot a vacuum bullet at his heart. Unlike Fumimaro, Fujin's target didn't have sensory capabilities. Additionally, Fujin's vacuum bullet was many times faster than Hoka's vacuum bomb. He didn't even see the attack coming and had his heart pierced. The rogue Kiri ninjas finally landed on top of the debris. They watched with grim faces. 7 of them had been killed without them even seeing who their enemy was. At the same time, the Yugaku Rei ninjas also arrived there and landed beside Team Renjuro. Their eyes widened on seeing the scene before them. 2 headless corpses with earth spears piercing through their bodies were next to them. The hill where the rogue ninjas were supposed to be had completely collapsed. And the 9 enemies they saw all had some injuries on them, while the Konoha ninjas didn't even have a scratch on them. Mitsusuka immediately analyzed the situation and yelled, "Disperse!" He instantly flickered away. The others followed him. Team Renjuro and Tokugi immediately gave chase. Renjuro made a shadow clone. He chased Mitsusuka, while his clone chased Fumimaro. Tokugi went after the 3rd Junin. Fujin, Miko and Hoka chose a Chunin-level target. Miko and Hoka looked for the ones who have higher chakra amongst the Chunnings, while Fujin went after the one who was injured. The remaining Yugakure ninjas were slow, they moved around 1-2 seconds after the others. Usually, Tokuhi would command them, but he was feeling pressure due to their subpar performance so far, so he moved quickly believing that his subordinates would do their job. They quickly gave chase too. Shisoku went after a Chunin alone. The remaining 4 chased in pairs. Chapter 130 The Interference of the Clones. The Tenkanaha and Yugakure ninjas chased after 9 rogue ninjas from Kirigujka. Mitsusuka noticed the enemy splitting up. He made a hand sign. 3 water clones formed around him. They dispersed in different directions. Rinjiro noticed them and made a hand sign too. 3 shadow clones appeared. They chased after the water clones. Rinjiro didn't mind this. His chakra was much larger than Mitsusuka's chakra, and he was confident that the water clones won't be able to interfere in the fights with his students. As for the Yugakure ninjas, he didn't care much. The first one to catch up to his prey was Fujin. Fujin was the second one to flicker among the group. Only Rinjiro was faster than him. In addition, Fujin's opponent was injured. He had a dozen needles stuck in his body. Fujin caught up with him with just 2 flickers. On seeing him, he grabbed his sword and rushed at him. This rogue ninja was Imamurase Taro. He didn't want to fight at close range due to the needles stuck in him. They limited his movements. He made a few hand signs quickly. Water release wild water wave jutsu. A 5-meter tall and 20-meter wide wave of water appeared in front of Fujin. Fujin decided to take it head on. Chakra flowed through Fujin's sword. He grabbed it with both his hands and swung it with a huge force. A horizontal flying slash of wind chakra was sent. It slashed the wave and moved towards Satoru. The accompanying winds completely dispersed his jutsu. Satoru was shocked. He had never seen a jutsu like this. He quickly jumped up thinking, "What jutsu is this? I recall the samurai sending flying slashes, but it was nothing like this." The slash passed from under him. It cut a lot of trees directly behind him. However, he wasn't uninjured. He was hit by the razor-sharp winds. Numerous cuts appeared on his body. Both his eyes were cut as well. He yelled in pain and horror. In the next second, his heart was hit by an air bullet. He fell down dead. After the rogue ninjas escaped, the first ninja died in under 30 seconds. They would have never imagined such a result. Fujin created a shadow clone to seal and store his body. He grabbed the scroll and moved towards other targets. While Fujin was fighting, the others were still chasing. The 3 Junins successfully escaped into the sea. However, Rinjiro and Tokuhi chased them into the seas. Miko and Hoka managed to intercept their targets before they entered the sea. They began fighting. However, they were restricted as they had to ensure that their opponent didn't escape into the sea. All 3 of the Chunins that Yugakure's Chunins chased also entered the sea. They followed them. The fight would have entered a deadlock, if not for 2 variables. The first one was Fujin, who killed his opponent in little time. The second variable was the water clones of Mitsusuka. Mitsusuka had seen Renjiro stand with the 3 kids before the Yugakure ninjas arrived. He had speculated that those 3 were his students. His 3 water clones rushed towards Fujin, Hoka and Miko. Renjiro's shadow clones followed them. Miko's opponent was Nakoni Motoyuki. He was an elite Chunin who specialized in the water element. Miko was faster than him. She and Motoyuki stepped on the beach at the same time. She threw 2 shurikens at him and another 2 shurikens to cut off his escape route to the sea. Motoyuki easily blocked the 2 shurikens. He looked at Miko with disdain. However, Miko's eyes turned red. He immediately became very alert. The Sharingan was a nightmare in battle. He was about to escape to the sea when he noticed that the other 2 shurikens had wires attached. Miko controlled those wires to redirect the shurikens at Motoyuki from the other side. At the same time she used fireball jutsu. Motoyuki moved to dodge the 2 shurikens. While moving, he used water wall jutsu to block the fireball. The fireball hit the water wall and steam spread through the region. Motoyuki immediately made a few hand signs. The mist began gathering in the region. Miko frowned as she noticed the mist getting formed. She was about to make a move when she felt danger. She immediately moved to her right. A water bullet passed through her previous location. If she hadn't moved, it would have hit her heart. Mitsusuka's water clone beat Renjiro's shadow clone in reaching this battlefield. However, it didn't accomplish anything, as Miko dodged it, and Motoyuki couldn't take any advantage of the opening it provided. Spikes formed under the water clone. The water clone quickly moved out of the way. Renjuro's shadow clone had also appeared on this battlefield. Miko observed both with her Sharingans and realized that they were clones. Renjuro's clone made a few hand signs. Great breakthrough jutsu. The jutsu cleared out all the mist and steam, while the jutsu was harmless. The water clone was vulnerable. He immediately used water wall jutsu to protect himself. Renjuro's clone appeared next to Miko. Miko grinned. She hadn't had the opportunity to fight alongside Renjuro as an equal yet. Neither did Fujin or Hoka. She was sure that she was the first among her teammates. Renjuro said, "While I am still here, we can fight even in water. I'll take care of it." Miko nodded and said, "All right, sensei." The 1v0 turned into 2v2. Both sides would be stuck in a deadlock. The situation with Hoka was similar. He tried dominating with his taijutsu, but his opponent managed to keep his distance. However, Vacuum Palm proved to be a huge challenge for him. They were in a deadlock until Renjuro and Mitsusuka's clones entered the battlefield. Due to Hoka's Byakugan, no sneak attack was possible. It just turned into a 2v2. In the same way as Hoka and Miko got attacked, the last water clone of Mitsusuka went towards Fujin. Unfortunately for him, Fujin's fight was already over. He immediately sensed 2 chakra signatures moving towards him. Fujin frowned. One chakra signature belongs to Renjuro, but it is much weaker. Should be a clone. Who is the other guy? Is it a clone too, or a new enemy? Mitsusuka's water clone frowned as well. He felt that he was sensed. He thought, his students are so fucking bothersome. All 3 have some sort of sensory abilities. How the fuck should I sneak attack them? The aspect that made Mitsusuka a terrible enemy was his ability to make perfect sneak attacks. Unfortunately, that ability was almost made useless. He frowned thinking, I made the wrong choice. I should have gone after the fucking Yugakurei ninjas. Not knowing who was coming, Fujin prepared the air bullet jutsu. Knowing that a sneak attack would be useless, Mitsusuka's water clone increased his speed to attack Fujin with full power. Renjuro's shadow clone increased his speed as well. Renjuro's clones couldn't catch Mitsusuka's clones as they moved in a random way to avoid Renjuro's clones. With Mitsusuka's clone traveling in a straight line, Renjuro's clone was able to close the distance. As soon as he appeared in view, Fujin recognized him. Seeing that it was an enemy, Fujin attacked with the air bullet jutsu. 7 air bullets were shot at and around Mitsusuka's water clone. Renjuro's shadow clone noticed the attack and moved out of the way. Mitsusuka's clone also moved out of the way quickly. The jutsu barely missed him. Had it hit, the clone would have been dispelled. Mitsusuka's clone was confused. He thought, why isn't anyone fighting with him? Did he stop chasing? However, the clone didn't think for long. He immediately made a few hand signs. Water release waterfall jutsu. A huge column of water crashed down towards Fujin. Fujin was annoyed. I can understand if his main body tried attacking me head-on, but a mere clone wants to take on me in ninjutsu. A huge amount of chakra gathered on Fujin. Renjuro's clone smirked on noticing it. He made a few hand signs. Mitsusuka's clone's eyes widened on sensing Fujin's huge chakra. Fujin supercharged his jutsu and launched it without making any hand signs. Wind release great breakthrough jutsu. Fujin's supercharged great breakthrough jutsu hit Mitsusuka's waterfall jutsu. Though the waterfall jutsu was 2 ranks higher, the amount of chakra the water clone had was very limited. After all, Mitsusuka made it to sneak attack and not to attack head-on. The great breakthrough jutsu tore into the waterfall jutsu and dispersed the water. The water clone immediately used another jutsu. Water release water prison jutsu. The great breakthrough jutsu hit the water prison. It was sent flying, but it held firm. Even so, the water clone had a grim expression. His chakra was almost over. While the great breakthrough jutsu was dying down, an earth spear appeared under the water prison. It pierced through it. The water clone saw the earth spear. Unfortunately, he didn't have the chakra to do anything about it. He avoided it, but the water prison jutsu was dispelled. He looked at the winds of the great breakthrough jutsu and shouted, "Fucking hell!" The great breakthrough jutsu hit and dispelled him. Chapter 131. Hoka finally gets to use taijutsu, a few kilometers away from the shores. Mitsusuka looked behind. Renjuro was still hot on his tail. He thought, one of my clones was dispelled, and so soon too. Sigh, how did we attract this bastard? Fujin looked at Renjuro's clone. He was hiding inside an earth dome. The dome collapsed. Renjuro's clone flickered next to Fujin. He asked, "What's the status?" Fujin replied, "My opponent is dead. How are things with you?" Renjuro's clone answered, "My opponent made a few water clones and sent them to sneak attack you 3. Fujin nodded. He had concluded along the same lines. Renjuro's clone said, My clones have gone to Hoka and Miko as well. You go help Hoka. I'll help Miko. Fujin nodded and flickered. He had already sensed Hoka. Fujin landed on a tree beside the beach. A frown appeared on his face. These guys are fighting on water. I won't be able to sneak attack. Fujin observed the situation properly. Renjuro's shadow clone was suppressing the water jutsus of Mitsusuka's water clone and the other rogue ninja. Both the water clone and the rogue ninja maintained a long distance from Hoka. His gentle fist and vacuum palm were too threatening. However, Renjuro's clone and Hoka weren't able to attack effectively either. Fujin thought, I should consider getting a summon that can fight in the water. After all, my water affinity is pretty much non-existent. I'll be in danger if I get trapped underwater. After observing for a minute, Fujin sighed. There is no way to sneak attack. Maybe I should have bugged Hiruzen for a jutsu that can attack over a kilometer away with pinpoint accuracy instantly. Surely he'd have something like that. Even if he doesn't. Considering the bodice titles he has, he should be able to create a new jutsu like that, right? Fortunately for Hiruzen, he couldn't know Fujin's thoughts. Fujin made a few hand signs. Wind release vacuum bullet jutsu. A vacuum bullet formed inside Fujin's mouth. Chakra gathered on his feet and Fujin flickered. The fight was happening around 250 meters from the shore. Fujin flickered thrice in quick succession. Mitsusuka's clone felt Fujin's danger and looked at him. He shouted, "Another ninja is coming. Pay attention." Ryu paid attention to the new enemy while keeping an eye on the existing ones. Fujin appeared on the battlefield in the blink of an eye. His target was the water clone. The water clone noticed that Fujin had built his chakra and was moving towards him. Immediately a water wall appeared between them. Fujin grinned and used vacuum bullet jutsu. The water clone's sight was blocked by the water wall. However, sensing danger, he moved towards his left. While moving, he saw something piercing the water wall he erected. He increased his speed. The vacuum bullet barely missed his abdomen. However, Fujin grinned. It was enough. The protective wind around the vacuum core was removed when it hit the water wall, as the vacuum core of the vacuum bullet passed by the side of the water clone's abdomen. It created a strong suction force. This force created a cut on the clone's abdomen as it absorbed some water from the clone. This cut was enough to dispel the clone. The water clone watched with wide eyes as he was being dispelled. He would never imagine that a kid not even in his teens would dispel him. Ryu watched with wide eyes. He cursed internally. What the hell? Not only did he lead Renjuro's clone here, but he got dispelled by a kid who hasn't even grown any facial hairs yet. What did I do to that foul-mouthed bastard that he would resort to such means to kill me? Ryu's complaints were understandable. Unfortunately, that wouldn't stop the Konoha ninjas from killing him. With the water clone dispelled, Fujin, Hoka and Renjuro's clone looked at Ryu. Ryu's hair all stood up. He had seen the capabilities of the clone. He knew that he had no chance of escaping into the water. Hoka took the gentle fist stance. Fujin grabbed his swords. They would be more practical while fighting on water. Ryu quickly shouted, "Wait, I surrender. I will give you all the secret information about Kirigujka. Just don't kill me." Hoka and Fujin didn't make any move and waited for Renjuro to decide. However, both were ready to make a move at a moment's notice. Renjuro judged for a moment. On deciding, he said, "All right, don't resist. If you do, I will kill you." Hoka closed all his chakra points. Understanding his position, Ryu didn't resist. Hoka attacked him and closed all his chakra points. Renjuro's clone flickered next to Ryu and knocked him unconscious. He put a chakra suppression seal on him. He looked at Hoka and Fujin and said, "You two go check on Miko. I will keep an eye on him." They nodded and flickered. Renjuro's clone carried Ryu and flickered to the forest and hid among trees. Hoka and Fujin moved towards Miko. Hoka asked, "How did you finish your battle so quickly?" Fujin shrugged and said, "I attacked that injured guy. Why did you rush after an elite Chunin?" Hoka snorted and said, "I wanted to fight a stronger opponent." Fujin smirked and asked, "Oh, I hope you had fun." Hoka didn't reply to Fujin. However, he was complaining endlessly in his mind. "I only fought him by myself for half a minute. Then the two Junin clones interfered and dominated the fight. I barely got to fight." On Miko's battlefield, Motoyuki was stunned when he saw another clone of Renjuro entering the battlefield. Motoyuki swore endlessly in his mind. "If I was winning the fight, I had set up the hidden mist jutsu. I could have easily escaped into the seas. I would have left far away in no time. But Mitsusuka's clone led Renjuro's clone here. With his methods, I couldn't escape. And now another one showed up here. Don't fucking help if you are going to make the matters worse." Mitsusuka's clone's expression was also grim. It understood the significance of Renjuro's clone showing up here. It meant that one of his fellow clones was defeated, and the ninja alongside him was also killed or captured. A huge fight began. The water clone desperately tried to defend himself while trying to create an opportunity to escape for Motoyuki. Unfortunately, nothing worked. The teamwork of the two clones was flawless, and Miko provided perfect support with her shurikens and the threat of Sharingan Genjutsu. After a bitter struggle, the water clone finally fell. Just like Ryo, Motoyuki also offered to surrender. As soon as he offered to surrender, Fujin and Hoka arrived. One of Renjuro's clones looked at Hoka. He looked at Motoyuki and said, "All right, don't resist. If you do, I will kill you." Hoka, close all his chakra points. Hoka was surprised to be asked that again. Fujin grinned and taunted, "Today's your lucky day, Hoka. You get to attack 2 elite chonings with your gentle fist. I am so happy for you." Hoka's face immediately went dark. He ignored Fujin and walked ahead while thinking, "I want to fight them head on. This is just lame." He followed the clone's command and closed his chakra points. The clone knocked him out and put a chakra suppression seal on him. Fujin said, "Sensei, even Hoka's opponent surrendered. Your other clone took him back to the shore." One of the clones nodded and said, "I will take care of him." He grabbed Motoyuki and flickered. Miko had heard Fujin's comment. She grinned and said, "Good job, Hoka. I am glad you finally found opponents to fight with Taijutsu." Both she and Fujin began laughing. Hoka's face got even darker. He looked at Miko and said, "Why are you laughing? Even with 2 of Sensei's clones helping you, you were the slowest of us." That made Miko scowl. She immediately began arguing with Hoka. Fujin silently moved away and stood next to Renjuro's clone. He was trying hard to suppress his laughter. Renjuro's clone was speechless. "We are in the middle of an A-rank mission, and 2 of my students are arguing mindlessly, and the third one is the one who instigated the argument and is laughing at it. Was I too lenient with them?" Renjuro's clone let out a cough. That attracted the attention of Miko and Hoka. Realizing what they have been doing, they immediately stop arguing. However, both gave Fujin a few angry stares. Fujin saw them but acted like he didn't see them. He thought, "So boy, these 2 are hilarious as always. It's so hard to suppress my laugh, ha ha ha." Seeing that his students have calmed down, the clone said, "We will leave the enemy Junins to my main body and Tokuti. Let us move and clear out the 3 chunings that are engaging against Yuga Kurei." They nodded and said, "All right, Sensei." Chapter 132 Underwater Battle. While Fujin, Miko and Hoka were dealing with their opponents, the others had begun fighting as well. Renjuro finally managed to stop Mitsusuka from running. Mitsusuka looked at Renjuro and shouted, "Why the fuck are you here, Renjuro? I have no interest in fighting you. I'll leave that fucking country of hot springs. That should fulfill your mission parameters, right?" Renjuro smirked. He wasn't unaware of how foul-mouthed Mitsusuka was. He said, "Unfortunately, you killed too many civilians. The daimyo was very insistent on bringing your head back." A scowl formed on Mitsusuka's face. He shouted back, "Don't fucking underestimate me, Renjuro. I killed dozens of your fucking subordinates in the last war. If you want to kill me, I'll take a fucking piece of you too." Renjuro didn't reply. There was no point in engaging in more talks. He made a hand sign. Water release water dragon jutsu. A water dragon formed behind Renjuro and moved rapidly towards Mitsusuka. Mitsusuka flickered while making hand signs. Water release water shock bomb. He released a jet of water that hit the dragon on its head and exploded. Both jutsus were neutralized. Water showered in all directions. Mitsusuka thought, "Too easy, there should be more." As Mitsusuka thought, 3 water dragons appeared at the spot where the 2 jutsus had just clashed. The one in the center moved straight at Mitsusuka. The other 2 water dragons split in opposite directions and attacked Mitsusuka from his right and left. Mitsusuka moved backwards while making hand signs. Suddenly, he jumped backwards. A huge head of another water dragon appeared under his feet. The dragon opened its mouth and shot a giant ball of water at Mitsusuka. Mitsusuka watched with a grim expression on his face. He continued making hand signs. Water release giant mirror shield jutsu. Just when the water sphere was about to hit him, a giant mirror of water appeared in front of him. The ball of water hit the mirror and exploded. The mirror collapsed, but the impact didn't pass through it. Behind the mirror, Mitsusuka had used water prison jutsu to protect himself. Renjuro watched from a distance. A sphere of water surrounded Mitsusuka, who was about 15 meters in the air. 4 water dragons moved rapidly towards the sphere of water. It looked as if the 4 dragons were competing with each other for food. Mitsusuka kept making more hand signs. water wall jutsu. 4 thick water walls appeared around the water prison. Each water wall blocked a water dragon. The water dragons pierced through the water walls and collided with the water prison. They exploded on contact. Mitsusuka infused a lot of chakra into the water prison jutsu. The explosions traveled through the water prison. But Mitsusuka wasn't hurt. However, the water prison crumbled. Mitsusuka and water slowly fell down on the surface of the sea. As he was falling down, his eyes were glued on Renjiro, who was standing steadily. He saw that Renjiro wasn't making any move, however. He felt a strong sense of danger. As soon as he landed on the surface of the sea, a giant claw attacked him. Mitsusuka immediately flickered out of the way. The giant claw slashed his afterimage into two. However, Mitsusuka wasn't unhurt, though he moved quickly. The claw still left 3 long cuts on his back. Mitsusuka watched what had attacked him. His eyes widened. It was a gigantic 25 feet tall sloth. He muttered in annoyance. This fucking beast. I still recall reading reports in the Third War of a giant sloth killing and eating my subordinates. Renjiro smirked on seeing Mitsusuka get injured. He had summoned the sloth. Under the cover of their first clash, he grabbed a sword and flickered towards Mitsusuka. Mitsusuka noticed Renjiro's movement. The giant sloth also began swimming towards him, understanding his disadvantageous position. Mitsusuka dived underwater. Both Renjiro and the sloth followed him. Mitsusuka dived to a depth of 100 meters. He created 4 water clones. Renjiro saw them and created 4 water clones as well. In an instant, all 8 water clones disappeared. The water clones moved at a very fast speed underwater. One of Mitsusuka's water clones attacked the sloth. The sloth, though strong and able to hold its breath underwater, was severely restricted by the water. One of Renjiro's water clones went to help him. The other 3 water clones flickered around at great speeds and tried to sneak attack Renjiro. Renjiro's clones stopped their sneak attacks and sneak attacked Mitsusuka as well. 2 men and 6 clones engaged in a high-paced melee underwater. They used numerous water release jutsus. While underwater, the power of water jutsus was amplified by a huge degree. The surface of the sea above them became very chaotic due to the impacts happening under it. Mitsusuka was very well versed in underwater battles. He attacked Renjiro from innovative and unimaginable angles. However, Renjiro was no slouch. He blocked all his attacks. The battle between the remaining 2 clones and the sloth also continued. Renjiro's clone and the sloth kept attacking as well, but Mitsusuka's clone countered properly and prevented the sloth from interfering in the battle. The 2 remained in a deadlock for a few minutes. To increase the pressure on Renjiro, Mitsusuka created 3 more clones. Renjiro smirked and created 6 water clones in response. 3 of them went ahead to intercept the 3 new clones of Mitsusuka. The remaining 3 moved together in a group. Renjiro thought, let's see how you counter this. Or the group of the 3 water clones attacked a clone of Mitsusuka who was engaged in combat. It was caught off guard due to being suddenly attacked by 3 more clones. One of Renjiro's water clones sent a flying slash at him and dispelled him. Mitsusuka's face became grim. He realized the danger that the group of 3 clones posed. He immediately recalled his clones. They stopped fighting and retreated next to him. Renjiro and his clones tried attacking and dispelling them, but they were able to dodge everything and go back safely. Mitsusuka and his 6 water clones looked at Renjiro and his 10 water clones and his sloth summon. Renjiro immediately pressed on the attack. His 10 water clones dispersed in different directions and assaulted Mitsusuka from all sides. Mitsusuka's clones entered into a defensive formation. They desperately defended Renjiro's assault. Mitsusuka cursed in his mind. These fucking Senju and their fucking huge reserves. If I keep fighting, my chakra reserves will dry up. I wanted to take advantage of him chasing me and land a killing blow, but he has been so fucking careful. I need to escape, or I'll be dead. Worse, I'd be eaten by the fucking beast. Renjiro's clones kept up the assault. Renjiro floated next to his summon and observed, he is in a crunch. If he just makes one misstep, I'll kill him. Either he will need to create more clones or he will need to find a way to escape. After desperately defending for a couple of minutes, Mitsusuka made his decision. He made a hand sign. 5 more water clones appeared around him. All his water clones immediately moved to attack Renjiro's clones. The last one attacked Renjiro and his summon. Meanwhile, Mitsusuka turned around and ran away. Renjiro noticed it. It was as he anticipated. He quickly made 2 water clones to intercept the incoming clone. He rode the sloth to chase after Mitsusuka. The sloth went around the battlefield of the water clones and swam towards where Mitsusuka had escaped. However, soon it stopped and turned around and attacked a water clone. Rinjuro was surprised. He hadn't instructed the sloth to do anything like this. However, his eyes widened as he realized why the sloth had done this. The water clone had a grim face. It was actually Mitsusuka disguised as a water clone. The one who ran away was actually a clone. Mitsusuka wanted to lure Renjuro's main body away, then he could create more clones to block all of Renjuro's clones and run away before Renjuro realized that he was tricked. He immediately began cursing. What the fuck? How the fuck can this beast smell underwater? He immediately fell into a difficult situation. Renjuro and his clones made a hand sign and assaulted Mitsusuka with dozens of water bullets. Mitsusuka barely managed to dodge and block them. However, a few cuts appeared on his body. Once the water bullet barrage was over, the sloth moved forward and swung its massive claws at Mitsusuka. Mitsusuka immediately moved to dodge it. Renjuro appeared in his path and attacked him with his sword. Mitsusuka knew about Renjuro's abilities with a sword. He grabbed his kunai and channeled his chakra through it. He blocked Renjuro's sword and used the force of the sword to move away from Renjuro. However, Renjuro's clone intercepted him and attacked him with Water Dragon Jutsu. At the same time, the sloth as well as Renjuro moved forward to attack Mitsusuka. Mitsusuka desperately defended himself. Chapter 133 Mission incomplete. While Renjuro and Mitsusuka clashed, Renjuro's clone and Tokumi also clashed with their opponent. Tokui's opponent was Orihisha Juki. They stood face to face on the sea. Juki taunted. "Tokuti, we have heard about you. You are a strong earth release user." Anki smirked and continued. "But we are at sea. How will you fight me here?" Tokuti wasn't affected by his opponent's attempt at disturbing him. He calmly said, "You ninjas from the Big Five villages need to stop underestimating us." He made a hand sign. "Since I dared to chase you, it means that the result of this battle will only be your death." Tokuhi opened his mouth wide. He spat out rocks and mud from his mouth. Soon, a small 5-meter radius island formed in the middle of the sea. Juki was surprised at Tokuhi's skill. He thought, "He is very good. No wonder Mitsusuka asked us to not fight against him on land." Tokuti made a few more hand signs. Earth release rock dragon jutsu. He spat out a 20-meter long rock dragon. Juki was surprised once again. He quickly moved backwards and made a few hand signs. Water release water bullet jutsu. He spat a few dozen water bullets at Tokuhi and the rock dragon, but the rock dragon moved and got in front of Tokuti. All the water bullets hit the rock dragon. But apart from a few scratches, no damage was done. Juki swallowed his saliva. Such strong defense. Tokuhi smirked on seeing Juki's reaction. He controlled the rock dragon to move towards Juki. Juki instantly dived underwater. Tokuti jumped on his dragon and followed him. Inside the water, Tokuti again made a few hand signs. The rock dragon opened its mouth and spat multiple mud bullets at Juki. Juki was surprised, but he dodged them all. Juki made a few hand signs while running. Water release water dragon jutsu. A water dragon formed and moved towards Tokuhi. The rock and water dragons clashed. The rock dragon just moved through the water dragon, completely crushing it. Juki was dumbfounded. He screamed internally, "What the hell is this thing made of?" This matchup was very unfair for Juki. The earth element is strong against the water element. Of course, Juki himself isn't strong enough. Unlike Renjuro and Mitsusuka, he couldn't make his water dragon explode on contact, so the damage output of his jutsu was quite low. Juki was very annoyed by the battle so far. He immediately made a few hand signs. Water release water clone jutsu. 4 water clones appeared around him. They immediately dispersed and surrounded Tokuhi. Juki made more hand signs. A water release great current jutsu. A water current formed in front of Juki. It engulfed Tokuti and his rock dragon. They began getting dragged backwards along the water current. Tokuti exerted more chakra on his rock dragon to get out of this current. This provided an opening for Juki's clones. They immediately used water bullet jutsu on Tokuki. Each clone shot a dozen bullets. Despite the strong water current around Tokuki, each bullet hit its target. Tokuki saw the incoming attack and made a hand sign. Earth release iron skin jutsu. All 48 water bullets hit him. However, he didn't suffer any damage at all. Juki and his clones were speechless. Juki's eyes went red in anger. He screamed in his mind, "You know what? Screw you." He made eye contact with his water clones. His water clones moved and made hand signs. Water release great current jutsu. All 4 water clones poured all their chakra into the jutsu. They created 4 more water currents, and each of these water currents joined up with the current created by Juki. It was like tributaries joining up with the main river. As a result, the force of the water current increased exponentially. Tokudi tried his best to break out of this water current, but to no avail. Both Tokudi and his rock dragon were washed away for a couple of kilometers. Juki watched Tokudi getting washed away. He thought, that wouldn't be enough to kill him. But screw him, I don't want to fight that turtle. He created 4 water clones. 1 clone ran towards Tokudi. 1 stayed where he was. Juki and the remaining 2 clones ran in different directions. Tokudi was livid at getting washed away in this manner. The strong current also damaged his rock dragon to a certain extent. Its rocky scales had been crushed, and there were cracks all through its body. Tokuni decided to dump it, and moved forward at full speed. A few kilometers from where Tokudi and Juki clashed, another clash took place. Rinjuro's clone had caught up with Fumimaro. Rinjuro had put around 25% of his chakra in this shadow clone. No words were exchanged between them. They directly attacked each other. Knowing that his opponent was just a clone, Fumimaro began attacking with low-power but large-scale water jutsus. Rinjuro's clone knew that defeating a Junin with just a clone would be close to impossible. He stayed on defense. After all, he only needed to stall his opponent until his main body was done with his fight. Unfortunately for Rinjuro's clone, he didn't have enough information regarding Fumimaro, while Rinjuro's clone kept his distance from Fumimaro. Fumimaro too didn't try to close the distance between them, and instead stayed far away. He just used a combination of water bullet, exploding water colliding wave, water dragon and water gun jutsus. Rinjuro's clone managed to block everything perfectly with water wall and water prison jutsus. After fighting for 4 minutes, Fumimaro made a hand sign. Hidden mist jutsu. Rinjuro's clone frowned as the mist began forming. This jutsu was very good for running away. He immediately made a few hand signs. Wind release, great breakthrough jutsu. The jutsu immediately dispersed all the mist. However, Fumimaro secretly smirked. While the winds were traveling away from Renjuro's clone due to the great breakthrough jutsu, 1 small wind traveled across the flow towards Renjuro's clone. Renjuro's clone felt that something was off, but he couldn't understand what. He focused chakra into his eyes. They began glowing. He was surprised. A wind clone was disguised as the wind itself and traveling towards him. Seeing that he was noticed, Fumimaro's wind clone appeared in front of him. He was only 10 meters away from Renjuro's clone. Immediately, a water wall began appearing in front of Renjuro's clone. However, it was too late. Fumimaro's wind clone exploded. The wind sent by the explosion pierced through the thin water wall. Renjuro's clone flickered, but he still got hit. A small cut appeared on his face. He looked at Fumimaro and said, "I underestimated Unk and got dispelled into smoke." Fumimaro looked at the spot where Renjuro's clone was. He thought, shadow clones are known to transmit memory. If he defeats Mitsusuka, he will come after me. He created a few water clones and they all dispersed in different directions. As he left, Fumimaro thought, it was a mistake to come here. I had advised Mitsusuka to not create any chaos. Unfortunately, he enjoys killing and torturing just as much as swearing. Even if Mitsusuka survives, I shouldn't go back with him. He will just attract another calamity. But where to go without him? If I stay in the vicinity of Hidden Mist, I will attract those dogs of Mizukage. I can't join the rebel faction either due to how many of them I killed. He thought for a bit. The best place to go would be to a country that doesn't border any of the big 5 countries. Unfortunately, such a country doesn't exist. I guess I will move to the distant land of snow. Perhaps there I could find clues on how to fuse my wind and water elements into the ice element. With no one pursuing him, Fumimaro quickly escaped from the battlefield. Since he ran on water, there wasn't any trail left behind. Rinjuro, who was assaulting Mitsusuka along with his summons and clones, got the memories of his defeated clone. He was surprised. I had heard about him, but there was no intel on his wind nature capabilities. He hid it deep. However, he ignored it and focused on Mitsusuka. Both Renjuro and Mitsusuka had returned to the surface of the sea. Mitsusuka's state was terrible. His clones had all been defeated. There were a lot of small injuries on his body. There were 9 huge claw marks on his body. And his left arm was missing from the elbow. Knowing that his death was imminent, he shouted, "Rinjuro, let me go or I'll haunt you even after I become a fucking ghost." Rinjuro was surprised by this threat. He thought, well, that's a new one. Mitsusuka's expression was full of anger. However, he was thinking, Damn it, how do I distract him for a moment to get away? Even something crazy like that doesn't make him even blink an eye. Am I going to fucking die here? Mitsusuka was on his last legs. Renjuro's clones launched a fresh assault. Mitsusuka dodged desperately. However, after such a long fight, he finally gave an opening to Renjuro. Renjuro immediately flickered behind him and swung his sword at his neck. Mitsusuka noticed and ducked down as quickly as he could. The sword barely missed him and only cut his hair. Renjuro followed with a kick. Mitsusuka noticed it as well and tried to move ahead to avoid getting hit. However, it resulted in his ass getting kicked, and he was launched up into the air. Unfortunately for Mitsusuka, Renjuro's kick was a part of the Senjutsu Jutsu style. His kick was infused with a lot of chakra. Mitsusuka's entire skeleton was shaken due to that kick. Many organs began bleeding internally. His sits bones were cracked. Seeing him in the air, Renjuro's clones immediately attacked him with water bullet jutsu. Surprisingly, even in this terrible shape, Mitsusuka made a hand sign with his remaining hand. Water walls rose around him. The water walls were too weak to block the water bullets. However, they managed to divert the direction of the water bullets slightly. Not a single water bullet hit him. Renjuro watched with praise in his eyes. He thought, this is a real Junin. Unfortunately, this is the end for him. Renjuro didn't attack anymore. Mitsusuka started falling. He was falling straight where the sloth was. The sloth swung its huge claw down at Mitsusuka. Mitsusuka noticed it, but he had no way to move out of the way. He grabbed a kunai and raised it to block the beast. However, the sloth didn't even feel the kunai. Its claw hit Mitsusuka's head and cracked it open. He became the fourth Junin from Kiri to fall to Renjuro and his students in the span of 4 days. Chapter 134. The sea is vast. Tokuri chased rapidly after Juki. After traveling a bit, he encountered Juki's clone. He immediately recognized that it was a clone. He wanted to ignore it and move around, but the clone attacked him. After a small clash, Tokuhi managed to injure the clone and dispel it. After reaching the place where he fought with Juki, he found another clone. Not seeing Juki anywhere, Tokuhi decided to take his anger out on the clone. The water clone saw Tokuhi and immediately attacked with water bullets. Tokuhi made a few hand signs. Earth release mudwall jutsu. He spat out a mudwall in front of him to block the attack. The mudwall blocked all the water bullets. Tokuhi made a few more hand signs and slammed his right palm on the mudwall. The mudwall immediately began shooting out mud shurikens at the water clone. However, the clone managed to dodge everything. The speed of the mud shurikens was slower due to the drag inside the water. The two exchanged more attacks as they kept fighting. Tokuhi's mood kept getting worse, though the clone didn't manage to land any hits on him. The fact that he couldn't defeat the clone of a not-so-famous Junin for so long hurt his pride. After a couple of minutes, the clone's chakra was almost exhausted. It stopped attacking and said, "There is no need to fight anymore." Tokuhi stopped, but his face was ugly. The clone smirked on seeing his expression. He said, "My main body has already escaped far away. You will never be able to catch him. I can tell you that my main body has no intention of returning to the land of hot water. However, if you keep hunting me persistently, I will give up on a peaceful life and go back to the land of hot water occasionally to kill your civilians. Convey this message to your daimyo." Tokuhi's face was ugly. However, he didn't reply. There was no point in talking with a water clone. After all, the message wouldn't travel to the main body. Seeing his ugly face, the water clone laughed. His body began dispersing. Hearing his laughter finally pushed Tokuhi off the edge, he moved forward. A mud spear formed in his right hand. It solidified instantly and he threw it at the clone. He thought, at the very least, I will dispel this clone. Juki's clone smiled and made a hand sign. His water body's shape began deforming. The mud spear passed through its body without harming it. The clone's body transformed into a water blade that slashed at Tokuhi's face. At such a close distance, Tokuhi had no time to harden his skin. He immediately tried moving out of the way. The water blade hit his right cheek and left a cut on it. The cut wasn't serious. However, it was a big slap to his face. It was a big blow to his pride. After such a pitiful performance, with what face could he ask the daimyo for more funds? Not wanting to give up like that, he tried searching for Juki fruitlessly. After killing Mitsusuka, Renjuro stored his body and left for where Fumimaro and his clone had clashed to check if any trails were available. Meanwhile, Fujin, Miko and Hoka tried to search for others. Renjuro's clone followed them silently. After searching for some time, Hoka finally saw Shisoku fighting against an enemy. Not having any way to sneak attack in the middle of the sea, they decided to attack from the front. They immediately flickered towards them. Shisoku and Saga Shorak were equally matched against each other. Both had water affinity. They had just clashed with each other and were separated by a few meters when the trio flickered in and attacked without warning. Fujin was the first one to attack. He attacked from a distance with the air bullet jutsu. Hoka followed up with a vacuum bomb. Shorak had just noticed the trio when the attack arrived. He hurriedly made hand signs for water wall jutsu and tried getting out of the way. Fujin's air bullets pierced through the water wall with ease. Many of them hit Shorak, but none hit him in a critical area. However, he was hurt and bleeding. The pain diverted his attention, and he couldn't avoid Hoka's attack. Hoka's attack hit his heart and made him cough blood. Miko didn't do a ranged attack and instead sped up towards him. She flickered in front of Shorak right after Hoka's attack hit him and slit his throat. Shisoku was dumbfounded. The opponent that he was struggling with was killed so easily by the three kids he doubted. Fujin looked at the stunned Shisoku and asked, "Are you aware of where your fellow ninjas are?" Shisoku shook his head. "No, but what happened to your opponents?" Miko replied haughtily. "They are dead obviously." Unlike Fujin, Miko took pleasure from Shisoku's stunned face. She was aware that the Yugakurei ninjas underestimated them. Replying in this way felt satisfying. Fujin sighed and said, "We will have to search for them in the open seas. It's so tedious." Miko and Hoka nodded. While the open seas didn't have any obstacles, it was way too big. Even with the huge range of Hoka's sight and Fujin's chakra field, it was difficult to find them. Miko said, "Let's go look for someone else too." Fujin nodded. "Yeah, let's move." The trio were about to move when Shisoku asked with an embarrassed expression, "Can I come with you as well?" Fujin looked at Hoka and Miko. Both their faces showed that they didn't want him. He chuckled internally. Fujin answered, "No, we have never worked with you before, so our teamwork will be affected. It'll be better if we search in opposite directions. That would double our chances of finding someone and helping them." Fujin, Miko and Hoka flickered without waiting for Shisoku's reply. Renjuro's clone, who was keeping a watch from afar, chuckled and followed them. Shisoku never sensed Renjuro's clone. Shisoku watched the trio with a dumbfounded expression. He thought, "This is the first time I have felt three kids looking at me as if I was useless. The kids in my village look up to me. Besides, how can my scouting skills compare to that of a Hyuga?" He shook his head and stored the body of the dead rogue ninja and went in the opposite direction. The trio continued searching for around 10 minutes but didn't find anyone. Miko complained, "What the hell? How long are we going to search in these open seas? There is no one here." Hoka nodded. Fujin thought for a bit. He made a hand sign. Shadow clone jutsu. He used shadow clone jutsu multiple times until he made 6 clones. The clones immediately dispersed in different directions with their chakra field activated. Miko and Hoka noticed that. Hoka said, "That's smart, Fujin." Miko asked in an annoying tone, "Why didn't you use this tactic earlier?" Fujin shrugged his hands and answered, "Experienced ninjas are able to know when they are being sensed, especially if they are sensors. If they notice my clones, they will just run away, and with us being far away from our clones, the enemy will run away by the time we reach there." Miko understood Fujin's reasoning. She said, "That makes sense." The trio waited at their spot. After a few minutes, one clone dispelled itself. Fujin received his memories. He said, "One of my clones found 2 Yugakurei ninjas. They are carrying the dead body of the enemy they chased." Hoka sighed. "Well, that's useless for us." Fujin nodded. He created another shadow clone, which replaced the one who dispelled. Fujin's clones searched for half an hour without any success. With their chakra dropping low, all dispelled themselves. Fujin received their memories and said, "It's hopeless. They didn't find anyone." He looked back and said, "Not even your main body, Sensei." Renjuro's clone appeared behind them and said, "It means that they are fighting too far into the sea. Leave it. There is no point in trying to find others anymore. Let's return to the beach and meet up with my other clone." The trio sighed and followed him. After a few minutes, they returned to the beach and met up with the clone of Renjuro, who was looking after the 2 captured enemies. The other clone had dispelled himself to send memories to Renjuro. After meeting up, Renjuro's clone that was following his students also dispelled himself. Renjuro, who was a long way into the sea, received the memories of his clone. He thought, "Of the 9 we chased, 5 Chunnings and their leader are confirmed dead. Fumimaro escaped. And we don't know the status of the other 2. He sighed. "I guess this will be the extent of completing this mission. It's difficult to kill every one of them, especially the Junins." Knowing that the search for Fumimaro was pointless, Renjuro decided to return to the beach. Chapter 135. Concluding the mission, Senju Renjiro returned to the beach. He found his clone, students and 5 Yugakurei Chunins waiting there. Shunso had joined the 3 Yugakurei Chunins along with their sleeping teammate. They had set up a couple of tents. Renjiro entered the tent of his students. Fujin had sensed Renjiro when he arrived close to the beach. All 3 students greeted him. Miko asked, "What's the status of the mission, sensei?" Renjiro's clone dispelled itself to transmit all the memories back to his main body. Renjiro answered, "Their leader Mitsusuka is dead. The other Junin that my clone chased managed to escape." The trio were surprised. This was the first time they heard someone escaping from Renjiro. Renjiro looked at their expression and shrugged his hands and said, "It was a clone. It's difficult to stop a Junin with just a clone." The trio looked away awkwardly. Their expectations from Renjiro were too high. Fujin asked, "What about the ones who didn't return, sensei? We searched for them a lot but didn't find them." Renjiro answered, "There are 2 possibilities. The first possibility is that they are dead, with their bodies at the bottom of the seafloor or taken away by the enemies, or the second possibility of them failing their mission and trying to search for the enemy fruitlessly." The trio nodded. They had reached the same conclusion. Renjiro continued, "Let's wait here till the evening. If they are alive, they will return when their chakra drops low." The trio nodded. The tent became silent. They didn't have anything to do but wait. After some time, Fujin said, "I'm bored of eating ration bars. You guys wanna hunt fish?" Hoka and Miko immediately agreed. Hoka said, "Definitely." Miko said, "Let's go." All 3 flickered out of the tent, leaving Renjiro alone. Renjiro sighed and muttered, "Oh well, this mission is pretty much over. No harm in having some fun." Before diving into the water, Miko announced, "The one who catches the biggest fish is the winner. The time limit is 10 minutes. She dived into the sea without waiting for the response of her teammates. Hoka and Fujin chuckled and dived into the water as well. Miko activated her Sharingan to watch properly underwater. Hoka activated his Byakugan. He had the advantage in this competition. Fujin spread his chakra field to pick up on signs of fish. They dispersed in different directions. The Yugakurei ninjas noticed them diving into the sea in a hurry. Shunso wondered, did they find an enemy? He immediately alerted others and they prepared themselves for a fight. The trio searched under the sea. Hoka was the first one to find prey. He saw a big whale shark. He ran towards it quickly. The whale shark noticed something coming towards it and sensed the danger. It immediately charged towards Hoka to tackle and bite him. However, Hoka moved out of the way and hit it with the gentle fist style. A single hit killed the shark. Fujin was the next one to find his target. He found a giant crab. He thought, damn, do crabs in this world become so freaking huge? On second thoughts, there are gigantic toads, so this shouldn't be strange, I guess. The crab noticed Fujin and attacked him with its giant claws. Fujin dodged and gathered chakra on his fist. He punched between its eyes. The punch caused cracks to appear on its shell. Its brain was smashed due to the punch. It died. Fujin lifted the crab and began making his way back. Miko saw quite a few giant fishes, but she wasn't satisfied. When the time began to run out, her eyes laid upon an 8-meter-long bluefin tuna. She immediately went towards it and killed it. She carried it back. Hoka was the first one to return to the coast. Behind him, he dragged a 12-meter-long whale shark. The Yugakurei ninjas watched with wide eyes. One of them cursed, "Those brats went fishing. We don't know where our teammates are and they are enjoying themselves." Shunso calmed him. "Calm down. They have done more than enough for the mission. No point in getting angry with them." The guy snorted and stayed quiet. Soon Fujin returned. He walked on the surface of the sea with his right arm stretched up. He was carrying the giant crab on his right hand. He walked next to Hoka's shark and dropped his crab there. Hoka quickly observed and smirked. He claimed, "My shark is 12 meters long. Your crab is only 10 meters in height. I won." Fujin's eyes twitched. He counted. "Look at their sizes. Your shark is only 2 meters wide. My crab is 8 meters wide. So mine is much bigger than yours." Hoka was about to argue when Miko returned. She was carrying an 8-meter-long blue tuna fish. She saw Fujin's crab and Hoka's whale shark, and her face became upset. Hoka chuckled. "Well, we know who the loser is." Fujin nodded. Miko's tuna was the shortest and the thinnest among the 3. Miko snorted in displeasure. Hoka asked, "Miko, judge whether Fujin's crab or my shark is bigger." Miko was upset at losing. She turned her head away and snorted, "I don't care which fish is bigger. Why are you arguing like little kids?" Fujin and Hoka gave her deadpanning looks. Hearing the commotion, Renjiro left the tent. Hoka looked at him and said, "Sensei, you be the judge. Is my shark or Fujin's crab bigger?" Renjiro's eyes twitched. He thought, why are they being so childish? He looked at Miko, who was looking away from them and had the smallest fish, and realized. Looks like it was her idea. Hoka pressed Renjiro. "Come on, Sensei. Tell me that my fish is bigger." Renjiro replied, "Stop being childish and cook the fish you caught." Hoka sighed due to not getting any answer. Fujin chuckled at his antics. The trio decided what fish to eat. After some discussion, they decided to eat the crab, as none of them had eaten a giant crab before. The shark and the tuna were stored in special storage scrolls that helped keep food fresh. Preparing and cooking the crab took quite some time. All four ate it till their stomachs were full. They invited the Yugakuri ninjas, but they politely refused the invitation. Late in the afternoon, Tokuti and the remaining two Chunings returned to the beach. Renjiro asked, "What's the status of your opponents?" Tokuti replied, "Mine managed to run away." The Chunings replied, "Our opponent ran away as well. We tried searching but couldn't find anyone." Renjiro nodded and said, "From 13 Chunins and 3 Junins, only 2 Junins and 1 Chunin are left, and we suffered no casualties. The mission can be considered a success. The ones who escaped will not dare to return here again. And once the news spreads, other rogue ninjas also won't dare to create chaos in the land of hot water." Tokuti asked, "Which other Junin managed to escape?" Renjiro answered, "I killed Mitsusuka. Fumimaro managed to injure my clone and escaped." Tokuti breathed a sigh of relief. He said, "Good. As long as Mitsusuka is dead, this mission can be considered a success." Renjiro nodded and handed him a scroll. He said, "His body is inside it." Tokuti accepted the scroll. Renjiro looked at Fujin and said, "Give him the body of the ninja you killed as well." Fujin nodded and handed the scroll to Tokuti. Tokuti chatted more about the mission. He talked with his subordinates as well to understand everything that took place. After understanding everything, he walked to Team Renjiro's tent. On entering, he saw the 2 captured rogue ninjas. He said, "Renjiro, I want to take over these 2 as well." Renjiro shook his head and said, "They surrendered to me. I will take them to Konoha and interrogate them properly." Tokuti realized why Renjiro was adamant. They could provide Konoha with a lot of important information regarding the current state of affairs in Kiriguchika. However, he insisted, "Renjiro, a lot of innocent civilians were killed by these guys. I can understand your point. However, we have to answer to the citizens of the land of hot water. So allow me to take them back first. Later, we can transport them to the land of fire." Renjiro frowned. He could understand Tokuti's point of view, but these 2 could provide Konoha with a lot of information. He thought for a bit and concluded, "If I stay adamant, I can take these 2 to Konoha. Tokuti won't stop me, and the daimyo won't say anything either. But this was a mission issued by the daimyo. He will be displeased by this action, and the goodwill generated by this mission will be lost." Renjiro said, "All right. But you are not allowed to maim or cripple them. I will report about them to Lord Haikage, and he will send a team to retrieve them. Pass this message to your daimyo." Tokuti sighed in relief. He immediately agreed to Renjiro's conditions. Chapter 136 Holy shit. Tokuti smiled and said, "The reward for completing the mission should already be handed to Konoha. As for the bounties, Lord Daimyo will send them to Konoha as soon as he can." Fujin asked, "What bounties?" Tokuti replied, "Due to the chaos that this group created. Lord Daimyo had put bounties on their heads. Mitsusuka had a bounty of 20 million ryo, any Junin in the rogue group had a bounty of 10 million ryo, while the Chunings had a bounty of 2 million each." He looked at the kids and said, "Fujin, you killed 2 Chunins. Miko and Hoka, you 2 killed 1 each, and you 3 helped Shisoko in killing his opponent. So the reward for that kill would be split among you 4. Fujin was stunned. "The help for 5 million ryo for such an easy job." Tokuti smiled on seeing Fujin's reaction. Hoka and Miko didn't react much. Fujin looked at Renjiro and thought, he killed Mitsusuka. In addition, he killed the 2 gatekeepers and 4 more Chunings. Before the fight began, he'll get a freaking 32 million ryo. Renjiro noticed Fujin's gaze but didn't react. Tokuti said, "I will lead my team to collect the dead bodies from under the debris." Renjiro said, "All right, we will take our leave then." Tokuti asked, "You don't want to rest for a bit in the town?" Renjiro answered, "No, we had some rest. Besides, the borders of the land of fire are closer to here than the town." Tokuti nodded and said, "All right, it was good working alongside you." Renjiro smiled and said, "It was good working alongside you as well." Tokuti left. Renjiro looked at his squad and said, "Pack up, we are leaving." The trio nodded and immediately packed up the tent. After gathering everything, they left. As they moved through the forest, Fujin asked, "Sensei, do rank A missions pay so much?" Renjiro replied, "It depends on how critical the mission is for the ones who issue it." This time, the daimyo was under a lot of public pressure. That is why he issued those bounties. Fujin nodded. Miko asked, "Sensei, how difficult are the rank A's missions?" Renjiro answered, "Well, imagine having to do this mission with just a squad of 4 ninjas. So if this wasn't a joint mission, it would have been close to a rank S mission." Usually, rank S missions aren't labeled as such due to difficulty. Rather, it is the critical nature of the missions. If it is labeled rank S due to difficulty, then our opponent would be an elite Junin, someone who could go up equally against me, Miko. Fujin and Hoka paid attention to Renjiro's words. Since this one would probably be their last mission together, they asked Renjiro a lot of questions. Renjiro answered them patiently and resolved their queries. While they were moving, Fujin occasionally activated his chakra field, while Hoka activated his Byakugan. During one such occasion, Fujin sensed something that shocked him. Fujin shouted, "Halt! 2 huge chakras are incoming. One has slightly lower chakra than Sensei, while the other one has more than twice Sensei's chakra." That shocked them. Hoka immediately activated his Byakugan, while Miko activated her Sharingan. Renjiro also became serious. He thought, "My chakra was naturally high due to being a Senju. The ones who had chakra equal to or higher than me are usually S-ranked ninjas." Renjiro spoke. Hoka answered, "One is a shinobi from Kumo while the other is from Taki. Both are rogue." Suddenly, Hoka stopped speaking. There was a stunned expression on his body. Renjiro asked, "What did you see?" Hoka answered in a shocked voice, "The one with the higher chakra has a different body. It's disgusting." This surprised them. Fujin thought, "Disgusting body?" A few faces appeared in his mind. Round 800 meters from Team Renjiro, 2 ninjas were traveling at a rapid speed. One of them was 5 feet 6 inches tall and very slim. The other one was over 6 feet tall and had a well-built body. The slim one asked, "Are you sure that Cash Cow will be traveling from here?" The tall guy answered, "My sources are never wrong. Now shut up and keep moving." Suddenly, both their eyes widened. The slim guy chuckled and said, "Looks like you were right, freak. Let's go quickly." Both of them sensed Fujin sensing them and moved rapidly towards Team Renjiro. Team Renjiro waited to see who was approaching them so quickly. Fujin had a very bad feeling. In a few seconds, 2 silhouettes appeared in front of them. Fujin watched as his eyes kept widening. They both wore long black cloaks with red clouds, red interiors, and chin-high collars. Fujin didn't recognize one of them, but the other he recognized very well. Fujin was scared. No, he was horrified. Only one thought ran through his mind. "Motherfucking Kakuzuos." Renjiro looked at them. He didn't recognize Kakuzuos but recognized the other one. He was surprised. He said, "Kaminari, I heard that you had disappeared from the land of lightning. Didn't know that you became a rogue ninja. Looks like Kamagagaka did a good job of hiding your details." A scowl formed on Kaminari's face. He didn't like anyone recalling his days when he was in Kamagagaka. Though Renjiro spoke casually, he was on full alert to start a fight. Fujin looked at Miko and made eye contact. Miko noticed his gaze and understood what he wanted. Meanwhile, Hoka kept observing Kakuzu's body. He was very surprised at seeing the 5 hearts inside Kakuzu's body. Kakuzu said, "Senju Renjiro, I have heard a lot about your war exploits. Today, I will claim the 45 million Ryo bounty on your head." Kakuzu wasted no time and moved forward to attack. Kaminari joined him. Renjiro grabbed his sword to confront them. However, Miko and Fujin were faster. Miko made hand signs immediately. Fire release great fireball jutsu. She released a giant ball of fire. At the same time, Fujin launched his supercharged jutsu wind release great breakthrough jutsu. Both jutsus combined. The fireball dispersed and spread out throughout the great breakthrough jutsu. Kakuzu's and Kaminari, who were focused on Renjiro, were surprised. Kakuzu's had used such a combination several times in the past. He understood its lethality. So did Kaminari. Both flickered behind. Kakuzu's made a hand sign. An earth dome appeared and covered them both. Renjiro noticed the earth dome and smirked. He made a hand sign and was about to slam his hands on the ground. Miko and Hoka were prepared to go on the assault too. However, Fujin yelled, "Formation 9. As soon as they heard it, their eyes widened. Kakuzu's and Kaminari were protected by the earth dome. However, soon needles began forming on the inside surface of the dome. Kakuzu's noticed them and snorted. He made a hand sign, and all the needles crumbled into dust and soil. They felt that the combination jutsu had already passed and hence lifted the Earth Dome. But, instead of a clear battlefield, they were met by a 20-feet-tall sloth who attacked them with its giant claws. They both flickered in opposite directions, realizing that Kakuzu's would be the bigger threat. He flickered in front of Kakuzu's and attacked with his swords. Kakuzu saw Renjiro and made a hand sign, Earth Release Iron Skin Jutsu. Kakuzu's skin blackened. He raised his fist and blocked Renjiro's sword. Chakra flowed through Renjiro's sword. It hit the back of Kakuzu's fist. The attack left a small slash on Kakuzu's fist. Kakuzu was surprised. He said, "It's been a long while since someone could hurt me. I will enjoy killing you." Renjiro and the sloth were about to press on the attack, but they suddenly withdrew backwards. Renjiro looked at Kakuzu's. It seemed as if there were monsters under his clothes, or perhaps under his skin, that were trying to break out. 4 black monsters appeared around Kakuzu's. Each had a mask of different color on them. Renjiro, despite all his experience, was stunned. He thought, "What the hell is this? And who is this guy? And why was there no mention of such a strong ninja during the previous wars?" Kakuzu's and the 4 monsters attacked Renjiro and his summon with perfect coordination. Renjiro kept his distance from them and tried his best to defend himself. He often resorted to diving into the ground to protect himself. Chapter 137 Fighting against the Akatsuki. On the other side of the battlefield, Kaminari was confronted by Fujin, Miko and Hoka. Fujin flickered in front of him while making some hand signs. Wind Release Air Bullet Jutsu. Fujin shot a dozen air bullets at him. Lightning sparks appeared on Kaminari's body. His speed increased a lot and he dodged all air bullets easily. Miko and Hoka quickly attacked with shurikens, but Kaminari dodged them as well with ease. Fujin analyzed. There is no lightning armor on him, just sparks. Is this a toned-down version of Reikuju's technique? After dodging, Kaminari moved towards the trio. His speed was incredibly fast. Fujin's eyes couldn't follow him. He instantly blew a great breakthrough jutsu in front of him. It didn't matter if he couldn't see his opponent's exact location. He would just attack the whole area. Kaminari saw the incoming attack and quickly moved out of range. He tried attacking from a different direction, but Fujin attacked again with the wide-range great breakthrough jutsu. Kaminari tried attacking from different directions, but Fujin just kept attacking with the great breakthrough jutsu. Kaminari was annoyed. This brat keeps trying to keep me at a distance. Does he think that he has infinite chakra, and that Uchiha girl is staring at me as well? If I try to break through his jutsu head-on, she will fire a fireball into this wind jutsu. Kaminari made a few hand signs. Lightning release false darkness. Multiple spears of lightning formed and moved towards Fujin's group. Fujin sensed Kaminari building his chakra and made a few hand signs. Seeing the lightning jutsu, Fujin launched his jutsu. Wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. Both jutsus clashed. Fujin observed carefully. He thought, "Isn't this the same jutsu that Kakuzu's used later? Did Kakuzu's take his hut?" Fujin's jutsu broke through the lightning spears and moved towards Kaminari. However, Kaminari had already launched another jutsu. Fire release blast wave wild dance. Kaminari expelled a large stream of fire, which moved in a spiral manner. It clashed with Fujin's jutsu. Kaminari smirked as he watched, and my false darkness was stronger than his jutsu. However, the wind release has too much of an advantage against lightning, but false darkness reduced the momentum of his jutsu, and now, my blaze wave will be assisted by his jutsu. As Kaminari had calculated, his blaze wave entered the infinite breakthrough jutsu and spread throughout it. Fujin thought, "Damn, he is good." Hoka moved forward and slammed his hands on the ground. Earth release earth wall jutsu. A huge wall appeared between them and the flames. He made another hand sign and slammed his hands on the ground again. Earth release earth dome jutsu. A dome was formed that covered all 3 of them. The fire covered a large area. It flowed over the wall and heated the outside of the dome. Trees were set on fire for hundreds of meters. The jutsu even reached Renjiro and Kakuzu's location. Both immediately escaped into the ground. Renjiro's sloth summon had already been injured by Kakuzu's and it had returned back. After a minute, the fire died down. Renjiro and Kakuzu's had begun fighting underground. Kaminari quickly moved across the battlefield. He stood on top of the earth wall and noticed the dome below. Fujin noticed his chakra and made a few hand signs. Lightning sparks began appearing on Kaminari's body. He jumped down at the dome. Lightning release lightning spear jutsu. A spear made of lightning appeared in his hands. He threw it at the dome. It hit the dome and pierced through it. However, right when the tip of the lightning spear appeared inside the dome, Fujin used his jutsu. Wind Release Vacuum Bullet Jutsu. The vacuum bullet hit the lightning spear's tip. It pierced through the entire length of the lightning spear and completely dispersed it. Without slowing down, it targeted Kaminari, who was falling down towards the dome. Kaminari's pupils shrank, seeing the vacuum bullet. The jutsu was aimed at his face. He quickly moved his head to the side. The vacuum bullet left a cut on his right cheek before hitting his right earlobe. Kaminari shrieked in pain as his right earlobe was pierced and the bottom half of his right ear was blown away. Fujin heard his shriek and followed it up with another vacuum bullet. The vacuum bullet pierced through the earth dome and targeted Kaminari, but Kaminari managed to dodge properly this time. Kaminari thought, "Fucking hell, why the fuck does someone so young know the wind vacuum technique?" He was mad in rage. Not giving him any time, Hoka placed his hands on the earth dome. The outer surface of the dome transformed into spikes and they immediately launched at Kaminari. Understanding that he was at a disadvantage, he retreated 100 meters backwards. With the dome gone, Fujin, Miko and Hoka looked at Kaminari. His face was ugly and full of rage. Kaminari was very angry. He thought, "How many bastards does Konoha raise? That wind brat is already one of the top wind users I have seen. And that Hyuga scum can use Earth Release as well as any Junin level ninja from Iwa. And they don't even look like they're in their teens." Kaminari made a hand sign. Lightning Release Lightning Clone Jutsu. 2 lightning clones appeared around him. They immediately went on assault, or moved around at a rapid speed. Fujin once again attacked them head-on with a great breakthrough jutsu. However, all 3 moved out of the way. Kaminari attacked the trio from the back, while his clones attacked from left and right. They were so fast that they attacked when Fujin was still releasing the jutsu. Both Hoka and Miko made hand signs and slammed their hands on the ground with perfect coordination. Earth Release Topsy-Turvy Jutsu. The ground in front of the Kaminari and his clones immediately became uneven. Some parts of the ground went up a few inches, while some other parts went down a few inches. The aim of this jutsu was to make the attackers lose their footing and fall down. Kaminari and his clones noticed them and immediately slowed down. The slowdown was enough for Fujin to turn around and launch another great breakthrough jutsu at Kaminari. Hoka and Miko also made hand signs. Water Release Water Gun Jutsu, Fire Release Flame Bullet Jutsu. They both launched jutsus on the clones. Kaminari and his clones had to retreat once again. While Kaminari was retreating, the trio were attacked from the other side. Kakuzua's fire mask had been useless against Renjuro, so he sent it to help out Kaminari. It released a huge flame at the trio. Hoka made a hand sign and released water gun jutsu to intercept it. While Miko slammed her hands on the ground and raised an earth wall to protect them, they managed to defend perfectly. Kaminari didn't attack. He had some doubts. He thought, "Why is their teamwork so good? Even veteran teams might struggle to have such efficient coordination." They have left the attack to that wind user, while the other 2 are perfectly complementing him. Kaminari kept feeling that something was off, and while he was analyzing, it finally hit him. Wait a minute, why is that wind user fighting without considering his chakra wastage at all? His chakra has fallen very low now. In just a few more jutsus, he will be dry. Kaminari analyzed, but couldn't figure out the reason why they were acting that way. Kakuzua's and Renjuro were still stuck in a deadlock. Kakuzua's had the absolute advantage over Renjuro, but he couldn't deal any injuries to him. Kakuzua's analyzed, he is good. If it weren't for those 3 kids, he might have been able to escape successfully from me. That said, what is that useless Kaminari doing? I even sent my fire mask to help him, and he still can't kill 3 kids. The fighting continued for a few minutes. Team Renjuro was extremely exhausted. Fujin had one knee on the ground. Miko and Hoka were tired as well. They had spent a huge amount of chakra on ninjutsu. Renjuro was also exhausted, fighting against an S-rank ninja, and the 3 masks took its toll on him. Kaminari observed them and smirked. Finally they ran out of chakra. Now let me see why they fought so recklessly. Kakuzua's also observed very carefully. During the last few minutes, he had seen endless tactics and tricks from Renjuro. He didn't want to get careless. Fujin looked over at Renjuro. Renjuro was looking at him as well. They both nodded their heads as soon as their eyes met. Hoka and Miko noticed it. Immediately, all 4 flickered in different directions. Kakuzua's and Kaminari immediately followed Renjuro and Fujin respectively, while Kaminari's clones followed Hoka and Miko. If there was one thing that Team Renjuro prided upon, it was their skill with the body flicker jutsu. Even in an exhausted state, they all managed to flicker multiple times. Unfortunately, their opponents were very strong. All of them were chased down successfully. Chapter 138 Death of a Powerhouse. Team Renjiro ran in different directions at a fast speed. However, they were all very exhausted. Kakuzu's could match Renjiro's speed, while Kaminari and his clones were faster than Fujin and his teammates. After flickering 8 times, Fujin's chakra finally hit a low. He hid behind a tree and took deep breaths. Using the last bits of his chakra, he made a few hand signs. Kaminari arrived almost immediately after Fujin. He saw the tracks left behind by Fujin and saw where he was hiding. He went around the tree and appeared in front of Fujin. An evil smile appeared on his face. He said, "You brat destroyed half of my right ear. I will make you pay 1,000 times. He expected Fujin to be afraid. However, there was no hint of fear on Fujin's face. He was surprised. Fujin spoke with determination. "Ever since I became a ninja, I have always been determined to give my life for the village. Death doesn't scare me." Kaminari was stunned. But soon he broke into a huge laughter. "Ha ha ha ha." He looked at Fujin with a cruel look in his eyes and said, "Brat, let me educate you. Death is kind. I will show you how miserable life is. By the time I am done with you, you will be begging for death." Ha ha ha. Immediately a scared look appeared on Fujin's face. Kaminari's evil smirk grew bigger as he extended his arm to grab Fujin's neck. At the same time, Hoka and Miko were also caught by Kaminari's clones. They seemed too exhausted to fight back. Kaminari's clones approached them. Soon after them, Renjiro was also chased down by Kakuzu's. Kakuzu's lightning mask appeared behind Renjiro and pushed him to the ground and pinned him down. Kakuzu's appeared and said, "Your mastery of water element is very good. I will take your heart and replace my water mask with your heart." Renjiro's eyes widened as he processed this information. Threads appeared from the lightning mask and drilled into Renjiro's chest. However, Renjiro smirked. Kakuzu's immediately had a bad feeling. Boom! Renjiro exploded under the lightning mask. Kakuzu's moved away quickly, but his lightning mask wasn't able to. It took the full brunt of the explosion. The mask cracked. Kakuzu's was stunned. He lost one of his hearts. He watched where Renjiro exploded and thought, "Shadow clone explosion jutsu." But when did he make a shadow clone? Was it when he was escaping? No, I was keeping an eye. He didn't have any chance to make a shadow clone. So when did he do it? Kaminari's lightning clones approached Hoka and Miko. As soon as they reached within range, both Hoka and Miko exploded. The clones couldn't react fast enough and were caught in the explosion. Both were dispelled, though lightning clones didn't transmit information. The main body could sense when the clones were dispelled. The clones were dispelled when Kaminari's hand was extending towards Fujin. Kaminari realized that both his clones got dispelled and became distracted for a fraction of a second. Fujin noticed it and he exploded as well. Kaminari noticed and immediately moved backwards. However, his right forearm felt the explosion. Its skin was burnt. His face became ugly. He thought in rage, "When the heck did he create a shadow clone?" He didn't have any chakra left to be able to create shadow clones. He looked around the area but found no signs of someone escaping. He moved towards where his other 2 clones were dispelled. But once again, he couldn't find any signs of Miko or Hoka escaping. After a few minutes of fruitless search, he ran back to where the fighting had happened. Kakuzu's was inspecting the area. He appeared behind Kakuzu's. Kakuzu's immediately noticed the half-blown ear and a burnt right eye. Kaminari also noticed that Kakuzu's cloak was destroyed. Kaminari said, "The ones I chased were all clones. There were no tracks that showed someone running away." Kakuzu said, "Same here. The Renjiro I chased and escaped turned out to be a shadow clone. Bastard exploded it when I caught him." Kaminari said, "You too, the same happened with that wind user. I'm guessing it was the same with the other 2 as well, but when did they create the clones?" Kakuzu replied, "We were probably fighting the clones the whole time. Though they tried to hide their tracks, signs are showing that 4 people escaped from this route, and their clones all escaped in opposite directions of the Land of Fire's border. It looks like they wanted to lure us away and buy some time to escape." Kaminari was surprised. Immediately he became very angry. Blood vessels could be seen on his forehead. He said, "No wonder those 2 brats were so good with earth release and water release. They were Renjiro's disguised clones." His chakra flared up as he yelled, "Those bastards think that they can make a mockery of us. Kakuzu's, you check their tracks, and I will bring you to them. Those bastards can't escape from us." Kakuzu's nodded. Sparks appeared on Kaminari's body. He grabbed Kakuzu's and moved along the path Kakuzu said rapidly. They were taking the shortest route to the Land of Fire. After running at max speed for 5 minutes, they finally saw 4 silhouettes. Kaminari immediately shouted, Bastards, you think that you can make a mockery of me? Team Renjuro heard the shout and stopped. They immediately took a battle stance. Kaminari dropped Kakuzu's and rushed towards them. Kakuzu's followed him, but thought, something is off. Kaminari was much faster than Kakuzu's. He reached them in a blink of an eye. Renjuro unsheathed his sword and attacked Kaminari. Kaminari grabbed a kunai and flowed lightning through it and attacked Renjuro. Renjuro blocked his attack. At the instant their weapons clashed. Fujin, Hoka and Miko flickered next to Kaminari to surround him from all sides. Kaminari was surprised by this maneuver. He had a bad feeling. Immediately, all four exploded. Kakuzu sensed it and stayed behind. Kaminari, however, was completely caught in the explosion. He released lightning from all over his body to form armor, but he wasn't proficient in such an application of lightning. It helped reduce the impact of the explosion, but he was hit nonetheless. After a second, Kaminari jumped out of the dust cloud created by the explosions. His clothes were blasted. Almost all the skin on his body was burnt. He was bleeding a lot as well. Kakuzu appeared next to him and said, "The trail was left behind by clones. Since this was the shortest route to Konoha, we assumed that they escaped here. To think that they would set up another trap here." Kaminari looked at Kakuzu in rage and yelled, "Bastard, you led me into a fucking trap, and then hid behind and watched me getting hit." Kakuzu looked at him and said, "I didn't ask you to rush ahead like a moron. It was your stupidity." Kaminari yelled, "Asshole, are you calling me a moron? It was your dumb head that led us into this trap in the first place." Kakuzu didn't reply, but Kaminari kept yelling at him. After yelling for a bit, Kaminari turned around and walked away. However, in the next instant an arm pierced through his right lung. Kaminari looked down in horror. Threads drilled into his body as Kakuzu began taking his heart. Kakuzu said, "I guess they didn't tell you. My previous partners died because I couldn't stand them and killed them." Kaminari was stunned. A rogue ninja from Kamigagakuka, who was on the threshold of reaching S rank, died without anyone seeing. Well, not without anyone seeing, as two pairs of eyes were watching this act. The first pair of eyes belonged to Zetsu, the other belonged to Renjuro's shadow clone. Fujin's clone sensed when Kakuzu's and Kaminari were chasing after them. He relayed the information to Renjuro's clone, who used the minimum amount of chakra needed to create a shadow clone. The clone moved out of the path and hid underground. After killing Kaminari, Kakuzu removed his heart. Threads gathered around that heart and a new lightning mask was formed. Renjuro's clone watched the whole process. Surprisingly, Kakuzu didn't feel anyone keeping an eye on him until he was done with the process. After the lightning mask formed, it entered into Kakuzu's body. Knowing that any further hunt was meaningless, Kakuzu retreated away from the land of fire. Renjuro's clone dispelled itself to transmit the information back, long away from where Kaminari died. Team Renjuro entered the land of fire. Chapter 139 Formation 9. Flashback. Team Renjuro was about to press on the attack when Fujin said, "Formation 9. The eyes of Renjuro, Miko and Hoka widened. Formation 9 was a code word for a battle tactic that Renjuro had taught them. It was a tactic used under a specific condition. The condition was that they are facing adversity so strong that they have no chance of victory and a high chance of death. Renjuro's eyes widened, but he completed his jutsu. Fujin made one shadow clone and poured around 70% of his chakra into it. Renjuro made 3 clones and poured 60% chakra into one clone and 5% chakra into each of his remaining 2 clones. The weaker clones used the transformation jutsu to transform into Hoka and Miko, as neither of them knew the shadow clone jutsu. He followed up with the summoning jutsu to summon the sloth. All this was done in under 2 seconds while Kakuzu and Kaminari were hiding under the dome. The clones stayed behind while the real ones escaped by flickering continuously, after escaping for a kilometer. Renjuro made 3 more clones while Fujin made another. A couple of clones transformed into Miko and Hoka once again and continued escaping forward, while the real team took a different and longer path and left behind no tracks at all. After splitting, Fujin was breathing hard. He had lost most of his chakra to the clones. Since he planned to end with Shadow Explosion Jutsu, his clones won't return any chakra. After moving for a bit, Miko asked seriously, "Why did you say Formation 9? Who were those guys?" Fujin didn't reply and tapped one of the pockets of his flak jacket. A scroll dropped. Fujin opened it and summoned a bottle. Everyone watched as a bottle of soldier pills appeared in Fujin's hands. Fujin opened and consumed a pill. He looked at Renjuro and asked, "Do you want one as well, sensei?" Renjuro nodded and took a pill. Fujin kept the bottle back and answered, "The masked man is Kakuzu's. I read his information in the bingo book. He is, or rather was, an S-rank ninja. This information surprised them, especially Renjiro, who knew the information of all S-rank ninjas. Renjiro asked, "What do you mean by was?" Fujin answered, "According to the information, he was sent by Takigonka to assassinate Lord First Hokage, but he failed and was presumed dead. However, somehow, he managed to make it alive and return to his village. After returning, he revolted against his village and became a rogue ninja. He was never seen again. I guess everyone assumed that he died and hence he isn't put in the shorter bingo books." The explanation shocked them, but soon they became skeptical. Miko said, "The first Hokage lived a long time ago. How would that guy still be alive if he fought back then?" Miko purposefully stretched the word long while speaking to tease Fujin. Even Renjiro was doubtful of this information. How could someone that old look so young? Fujin shrugged and said, "We will get the information when our clones are dispelled. If you have the bigger bingo book, you are free to check." He looked at Miko with a smirk on his face and said, "If you want to go back to check with your own eyes, then good luck. I'll be sure to offer flowers to your grave, haha." Renjiro instantly shut him up. "Don't joke about such things. Anyways, fighting them wasn't a part of our mission, so there is no need to risk our lives against enemies we don't have information about." Fujin looked at Hoka and asked, "Hoka, you said his body was disgusting. What did you see?" Hoka answered, "Instead of nerves and blood vessels, his body seems to be made of threads, and he had 5 hearts in his body." Miko was shocked. She asked, "5 hearts? How can something like that be possible?" Hoka replied, "I have no idea." They both looked at Renjiro. So did Fujin. Renjiro shook his head and said, "I have never heard about any such technique. But if we assume that having just 1 heart would keep him alive, it could mean that he just faked his death against Lord First." Fujin, Miko and Hoka nodded. They all analyzed the information. After some time, Fujin asked, "Sensei, who was the other guy?" Renjiro looked at Fujin and asked, "You didn't see him in the bingo book?" Fujin answered, "The bingo book has way too many names. I probably forgot. I only read the S-ranked ninjas in detail." Renjiro understood. The bingo books had a lot of names. It was impractical to remember everything. He said, "The other guy is Kaminari. He was an elite Junin in Kamogagaka. He is strong and very close to being ranked S. He was deployed against Kirigujka in the Third War, so I never fought him before." Fujin was surprised. He thought, "Akatsuki recruits ninjas who aren't ace ranked. I guess none of Kakuzua's previous partners was ace ranked. That's why they died at his hands. This guy will be killed by him as well." Fujin asked Renjiro, "Why did he go rogue?" Renjiro answered, "We don't have much information regarding that. He went missing after the Third War. We speculated that the Third Raikage passed the secrets of his lightning-release chakra mode to his son, and not to him. That is why he couldn't master the lightning-release chakra mode, and hence didn't have any chance at becoming the 4th Raikage. Seeing that he has gone rogue, it looks like this is indeed the case." Fujin was surprised. He thought, "Oh well, no matter the world, nepotism exists everywhere." Fujin replied, "I see, that seems dumb." Renjiro nodded. "Yeah, it is." Fujin said, "Did you notice their cloaks, sensei?" Renjiro nodded. Fujin said, "They are both rogue ninjas, and both are very strong. Seeing that they both wore the same cloak, they probably have some organization behind them." Renjiro agreed. "Yes, it is disturbing. I'll ask Lord Hokage to look into this. If there are more ninjas at this level in this organization, then they could pose a threat to even Konoha." They moved alongside the longer path for around 10 minutes while discussing more. Miko and Hoka complained about missing out and decided to learn the Shadow Clone Jutsu after returning to the village. Team Renjiro flickered numerous times in order to ensure that they can't be chased. Miko and Hoka also consumed a soldier pill each. While moving, Fujin wondered, Renjiro was never mentioned in the original story. Could it be because he was killed by Kakuzuas? Then again, he is getting old. He could have just retired and stepped aside, and he probably became one of the thousands of nameless ninjas who participated in the Fourth War. Not much point thinking about it. Finally, Renjiro and Fujin received memories of their clones. Sweat immediately formed on Renjiro's face. He said in a shocked voice, "You were right, Fujin. Kakuzuas is strong, very strong. If we had stayed back, the most probable result would have been our death." Miko and Hoka were shocked. Hoka asked, "He is stronger than even you?" Sensei. Renjiro nodded. He answered, "Don't overestimate me. There are many who are stronger than me. While killing my clone, Kakuzuha said something about taking my heart. I guess his longevity secrets have some relation with his multiple hearts. Also, he probably went a bit easier on my clone as he didn't want to damage my heart." If he was serious about killing me, my clone wouldn't have lasted that long. Miko and Hoka were stunned by Renjuro's admission. Fujin wasn't surprised. He was well aware of how strong Kakuzu's was. Renjuro looked at Fujin and said, "You did great. If it was known that you managed to injure Kaminari, your reputation would explode." Miko and Hoka looked at Fujin with envy. Knowing their thoughts, Fujin looked at them with an innocent smile on his face and said, "I probably burnt his right forearm with the clone explosion too." They immediately snorted and looked away. They both hated looking at Fujin's smug face. Fujin looked at Renjuro and said, "Keep it a secret if you can, sensei. I don't want a bounty so soon." Renjuro nodded. Getting attention wasn't always a good thing. He said, "I'll report it to Lord Hokage secretly." Miko, Hoka, don't talk about this to anyone. Both nodded. As a ninja, keeping secrets was critical. The lesser others knew about you, the higher your chances of victory would be. Kaminari was much stronger than Fujin. The reason that Fujin managed to injure him was that he got overconfident and wasn't aware of Fujin's skill with the wind vacuum technique. Fujin looked at Renjuro and said, "Using long and wide-range ninjutsu is very useful, especially when fighting against someone stronger." Renjuro nodded and said, "It's especially true for wind element. Facing Sunagakure in the desert is a nightmare, even more so when they mixed poison with it. But don't get overconfident. Kaminari didn't go all out as your chakra would eventually run out. If you are outmatched, then this tactic is only good for wasting time." Fujin nodded. He had sensed that Kaminari stalled only because his fighting tactic was unsustainable. Fujin said, "I wonder if they will chase or not." Renjuro analyzed and said, "Probably no. They took 10 minutes to dispel our clones. Tracking would be tougher and they would have to move a lot faster." Fujin nodded. Chasing would be rather pointless now, but they were both wrong. A bit later, both received the memories of their clones again. Fujin said, "That was impulsive." Renjuro nodded. "Yes, it was." Miko and Hoka asked, "What happened, sensei?" Renjuro answered, "They tracked our clones. Kaminari attacked recklessly. All 4 clones surrounded him and exploded. He should be injured, but his life won't be in danger. I guess he was just annoyed at getting fooled." Miko chuckled. "That would teach him a good lesson for chasing after us." Renjuro replied, "Don't take it too lightly. This time we were saved due to Fujin reading the bingo books. When we return, you and Hoka should read it too. Also, this tactic worked perfectly this time. Next time, it won't work so well, so work hard and become stronger." His students nodded, though they got away without any injuries. The experience was very scary. After traveling for a bit, they finally reached the borders of the Land of Fire. Chapter 140 Akatsuki. While they were entering, Renjuro suddenly stopped. His students looked at him. Hoka asked, "What happened, sensei?" Renjuro replied, "Kaminari died." His students were shocked. Miko and Hoka thought, "How could someone so strong die suddenly?" Fujin recovered from the shock fastest and concluded, "Looks like Kakuzu has killed him for his heart." Though Renjuro didn't say anything, he probably managed to destroy one heart with his clone. Most likely the lightning one. Hoka asked, "How did he die, sensei?" Renjuro answered, "Looks like they had an argument. When Kaminari turned his back, Kakuzu has attacked him. His technique does depend on hearts. He stole his heart after killing." Renjuro thought hard. After some time he said, "Don't tell anyone about him. I'll make a secret report to Lord Hokage and have him investigate Kakuzu's." His students nodded. The death or betrayal of an elite Junin during peacetime would always be a huge deal. Such matters are better left to the village to handle. The team kept moving forward at a fast speed. Hoka asked, "Sensei, aren't we going to go to the patrol outpost?" Renjuro shook his head and answered, "No, a lot of things happened during this mission. It's best to report to the village right away. As for Saichi, I'll talk with him later." Fujin thought, "Yeah, that would be the best. Though we are inside the Land of Fire, I wouldn't call it safe." Due to eating the soldier pills, they weren't tired, so they continued moving without any breaks until they reached Konoha. Land of Rain. Deep within the dense forests of the Land of Rain, a hideout existed. Even light had difficulty reaching it. The number of people who were aware of its presence can be counted on one hand. A man sat still in this hideout. Suddenly, a figure began appearing from the ground. It appeared right in front of him. The man opened his eyes. His eyes shone with purple colors. Multiple circles can be seen in his eyes. White Setsu said, Pain, you won't believe what I saw." The man sitting was the Daiva path of Nagato. Pain looked at White Setsu, waiting for it to say, but he didn't say anything. Pain asked, "What did you see?" White Zetsu said excitedly, "Kakuzu's and Kaminari fought against a squad from Konoha. The Konoha ninjas managed to run away and injured them. In the end, Kakuzu's and Kaminari entered into an argument and Kakuzu's killed him." Nagato was surprised. He asked, "Which squad of Konoha did they run into? Did the remaining 2 Sanins return?" Black Zetsu replied, "No, it was Senju Renjuro, an elite Junin from Konoha and his students." Pine asked, "How strong are he and his students?" Black Zetsu replied, "He has a bounty of 45 million ryo. He is quite strong but not in S rank. His students just got promoted to Chunins." Nagato was surprised once again. However, soon he was disappointed. He thought, a squad of fresh Chunins, led by an elite Junin, managed to injure and run away from a couple of Akatsuki members. And they even caused an argument which resulted in one of my members dying. So disappointing. White Zetsu said, "It was so surprising. Kaminari just turned his back to Kakuzu's and got stabbed in the back." Nagato and Black Zetsu ignored White Zetsu. Black Zetsu asked, "What do we do now?" Pain answered, "Let Kakuzu's move alone. Scout a partner for him that he can't kill." White Zetsu said, "Since Konoha ninjas fought with them, Konoha will now have information about us. If they focus on us, it may cause a lot of issues. They have some scary ninjas." Hein replied, "They most likely already know about us. Even if they take any action against us, they are no threat. You don't need to worry about it, just scout for stronger members." Zetsu nodded and left. White Zutis said, "That was surprising. I thought he'd be upset or angry." Black Zetsu replied, "He is strong. Even without Akatsuki, he could capture all 9-tailed beasts. So he doesn't attach any importance to weaklings who'd die so easily." White Zetsu smiled and said, "Yeah, his eyes are so scary. Zetsu would search for new members for Akatsuki." Unfortunately, Haiden won't complete his ritual for quite a few years. So many more Akatsuki members would die at Kakuzu's hands. Konoha, after traveling the whole night, Team Renjuro returned to Konoha early in the morning. En route, Renjuro imparted his vast knowledge to his students to prepare them for their future. After entering Konoha, they went to the Hokage building right away. They walked towards the Hokage's office. The door was closed. Renjuro walked forward to knock on the door. However, an Ambu ninja appeared in front of him. The Ambu ninja said in a serious tone, "Lord Hokage is busy. You will have to wait." Renjuro looked back at him and said, "It's important." The Ambu ninja was surprised. He knew Renjuro. He said, "Lord Hokage is having a meeting with the elders." Renjuro replied, "It's more important. Besides, it's good that the elders are there. They would like to hear my report as well." The Ambu ninja nodded and said, "Wait a few seconds." He knocked on the door. Inside the office, Hiruzen was discussing some matters with Homura and Kahoku. They stopped as soon as they heard the knock. The Amber Ninja entered and said, "Lord Hokage, Senju Renjuro has returned and has something important to report." Hiruzen furrowed his eyebrows. He thought, knowing Renjuro, he wouldn't interrupt for no reason. He said, "All right, send him in." On hearing Hiruzen, Renjuro entered the office. His students followed him. The Ambu Ninja left the office and closed the door. Hiruzen looked at Renjuro and asked, "How did the mission go, Renjuro?" Renjuro answered, "The mission went well. There were 16 rogue ninjas who were formerly from Kirigujka. We killed 13. I'll report the details later. What happened while we were returning is important." Hiruzen and the elders paid close attention. Renjuro was one of the very few active elite Junins in Konoha. If he thought something to be important, it would be a serious matter. Renjuro said, "We were attacked by 2 rogue ninjas while we were returning. One of them was Kaminari from Kamagugaka." Hiruzen and the elders immediately became serious. Renjuro continued, "The other was called Kakuzuas. He is a rogue ninja from Takigonka." Fujin remembered his data from the bingo book. Apparently, he had tried assassinating Lord first. This surprised them. Kahoku immediately said, "That can't be right. Even if it is, that person would be very old and not worth our attention." Renjuro replied, "He is stronger than me. He would easily be categorized as an S-rank ninja. Luckily we escaped while deceiving them with clones. Otherwise, even getting away would have been unlikely." This shocked them. Renjuro's strength was top tier in Konoha. Only 3 in Konoha could claim to be able to kill him without allowing him to escape. Hiruzen asked, "Even you wouldn't have been able to get away?" Renjuro nodded. He said, "Even more worrisome is that they were wearing the same uniform. Both wore black cloaks with red clouds on them." Hiruzen's eyes widened. Renjuro noticed it. Hiruzen said, "Akatsuki," after a pause. He continued, "It's where my treacherous student joined after betraying us." Renjuro was shocked. He asked. Even Orochimaru is there. What do we know about this organization? Hiruzen replied. Not much. Jiraiya tracked Orochimaru and they entered into a fight. He got this information from Orochimaru. We did some searching. Apparently it is a mercenary organization. Ayla and smaller countries around it often employ them. We don't know much about them. Their leader is a mystery, so is their total number of members. Other than Orochimaru, we had heard just about Juzo joining them. And now we know about Kaminari and Kakuzu as joining them as well. Rinjiro analyzed and replied, that's not much information. Hiruzen nodded. They discussed a bit about Akatsuki and what steps they should take. Rinjiro proceeded to provide them with all the details of the encounter. Fujin, Hoka and Miko paid attention and observed how Rinjiro interacted with the leaders and provided the information. They noticed that Rinjiro made no mention of Fujin's battle achievements against Kaminari. After half an hour of discussion, Hiruzen handed Team Rinjiro the mission rewards. Hiruzen looked at the newly promoted Chunings who just had to undergo such a frightening encounter. He thought, sigh, I don't want such young kids to encounter such dangers. But since they survived, this incident will make them stronger. Should I reward them with something to motivate them more? As the thought crossed his mind, Hiruzen's gaze fell upon Fujin. He immediately decided, no, there is no need to. Team Rinjiro was dismissed. They left the Hokage's building.